Robin Rapsys.
Yeah, how did you know?
Is that how you pronounce it? Rapsys?
No. Well, okay, so it's Lithuanian.
Is it?
So I didn't know this my whole life. Somebody else told me it's Rapsys.
Rapsys.
But I mean,
Sheesh.
just you can say the first name however you want, right? It's American, right? Robin. But I always say Rapsys.
Okay.
That's how it's been my whole life, basically, until I was corrected.
No shit.
Yeah.
So you were pronouncing your own name wrong
I
for
guess.
years.
I guess, right?
That's fucking hysterical, because I was just talking to somebody on the previous podcast about that too. Who was it? It was it was Eric Keyes, but it's Keyes. So everybody has always said Keys.
Keys, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I'm almost convinced now that my own family's saying it wrong and you're all right. Is Rapsys the full name, or did they shorten it when you guys got here for some reason?
No, it's the full name. It's in the family. I got family in Chicago and stuff. Not much left in Lithuania, but actually, so I could go a long time, and I know we have time.
We have time.
Yeah.
Go for it, buddy.
So my dad was born in Germany during World War II.
Okay, wow.
His dad was the highest ranking officer of the Lithuanian army in World War II, and he was one of Hitler's targets during the war.
That was going to be my question, is where did Lithuania line up? Because I don't remember. So they were allies.
It's right next to Russia.
Axis.
It's touching Russia, and it's right in there.
And they were on the ally side, not the Axis side?
Right.
Gotcha.
And so they went into like a refugee camp in Germany. My dad's two older brothers were born in Lithuania, but he was born in Germany. So then they were in a refugee camp. They stayed there for a little bit, and then they came over to America when my dad was really young. And my mom always told me that his mom was so surprised that he lived on the boat ride over to America, because he was so sick that, I mean, he just got really sick on the boat ride, little. Now, that comes into play later because my dad passed away in 2003. Got the tattoo to prove it. He developed a seizure condition when he was older, and so he would have these seizures. He had medication though; things were going okay, but then just one day, just driving home, must have had a seizure. Is really, and he just kind of slow veer off the road, nailed a tree. Yeah, and it was like a huge surprise, but. Yeah, they were gonna like bring down his medication and stuff, like because he was doing so well, and then all of a sudden he had this. He hadn't had an episode in a while, and
then he did.
Yeah, and they say that condition can develop if you're really ill when you're young. You're still developing, so and that's kind of what you can attribute it to.
Holy fuck, dude!
Yeah. So
what? So when you got sick on the boat over here, what was it like? Just straight up motion sickness? Was it scurvy like we used to hear about all the time?
You know, there's a lot of questions that I have that I haven't always asked, but I would talk to my uncles. My his last brother just passed away over in quarantine here. His older brother was in his 80s.
Was it from COVID?
No, he had prostate cancer, was fighting it for many years. But so a lot of questions I could have asked, and my brother, he lives out in LA, Ryan Rapsys. There's two Ryan Rapsyses.
Are all the Rapsys related?
We have found some other Rapsyses on Facebook. I don't even know what nationality they are. But people have friended us because we're the same last name. And,
sure.
But they don't even speak English, and I never looked into what they were actually speaking. But
no shit.
Yeah, but it was just kind of like they seem friendly enough. They're friending us just because we have the same last name, but never really had a conversation. But so my brother's outside of LA, north of LA.
Yeah.
And he does like film composing, and he's been into film and stuff, but he did hours and hours of interviews with my oldest uncle who just passed away. Mm-hmm. He's got about 6 hours worth of interview about all that stuff when because he was about 10 years old when all this was going down. They went to Germany and then went over. He was much older. So like he experienced all this and a little bit stronger memory of it, Mm-hmm. But my brother was working on making a documentary about that whole story. And,
wow.
And that, because there's a lot of stuff that I probably didn't even know. I haven't even sat through the interview, but I was excited to see if my brother could get funding for the documentary. But He made like a trailer and stuff, but
So far, it hasn't gone anywhere.
yeah, it hasn't really gone anywhere.
It's
but
fucking tough, man.
yeah,
Like I mean, I think right now your best bet would probably be to hit up a Netflix, but you kind of already have to have something pretty much done. They're not going to fund it. They'll buy it once it's done, but you still got to get from point A to point B. But that seems to still be the easiest way to do it is if you can get affiliated with Netflix, you'll at least get it out there. But you still got to get that shit figured out.
Yeah.
How's he holding up with all the COVID shit out there in LA?
You know, he's a little bit outside. He's in the mountains. He's in Bear Valley Springs, but it's outside of, I can't remember. He's more in the mountains though. Okay. So they got space. He's got 2-3
So is he up more towards like Sacramento?
No.
San Francisco?
Closest would be I can't think of the city you'd fly into. You can fly into LA or
is it Burbank?
No, it's further north than that. I mean, you're good.
Burbank basically is LA, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's just a little, so like you're like an hour north of LA, where he used to.
Anyone from California is laughing at my idiocy right now.
Oh, my brother's laughing at me right now. And it's like, dude, you don't know where I live.
Well, dude, that's like you living in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Like it's like an hour north of the cities. I can't remember what it's called. Something Pillow.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Wait, what? No, Cloud. St. Cloud, fuck boy. So before we get too deep into anything, and I do want to touch base on that story, but some people are kind of confused as to just even who you are. So real quick, you don't have to tell your life story, but just give people the bullet points, what you do, who you are, all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, the reason I know you is we were in bands, right?
Yep.
So I was in the band To Petracy. We had a run in the Twin Cities, Minnesota area from about 2000. We officially said we started in 2003, but we were in Duluth at that time. Anyway, 2005 till about 2013 or so. We still are friends. We'll still play shows here and there, but we're not hitting it hard. We were trying to do 30, 40, 50 plus shows a year and trying to get out there. And now we do maybe one every couple of years or whatever.
That's the crazy thing. I'm not even sure 30, 40, 50 shows a year is enough anymore.
No, it's not.
Like, I think you need to be playing 250 shows a year, like every Friday and Saturday, and squeeze in a Thursday or a Sunday in there every once in a while per year for about 2 to 4 years. If you're going to do anything in this world.
Yeah.
Locally, it's a different story. So
right.
30 to 50 a year locally, it's actually probably too much.
Yep.
Like you should probably locally in the Twin Cities, we should probably, and this is my newer philosophy, right? Like nowadays with the internet and all that shit, in each town, you should only play once every 3 months, once every 90 days at most.
Yep.
And that's when you're still building your shit. You got to figure out though, if you're only playing in Minneapolis 4 times a year, you got 240 plus shows to fill, which means you're playing in St. Cloud. You're playing in when we say Minneapolis, we're saying Minneapolis. St. Paul, the Twin Cities, we refer to this as one big town, but St. Paul is its own deal. So you can play in Minneapolis once every 90 days and play in St. Paul once every 90 days because motherfuckers from St. Paul ain't coming to your Minneapolis show.
They don't go across for some reason.
They don't cross the river, bro.
I don't know.
We experienced this 15, 20 years ago when we first started. It's only gotten worse now. Even with all the public transportation, people are like, I ain't going to Minneapolis. Fuck that town. Or vice versa. I don't know anybody that enjoys going to St. Paul unless you're from St. Paul. It fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Being in downtown St. Paul, fucking parking, right? Like there's so many things that suck about St. Paul, and now there's no venues over there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a moot point now, but yeah, I mean 30 to 50 shows locally is a lot, especially when you're starting out.
It was mostly across the state. We would stretch out to North Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, of course. A little bit of that, 5-state area, whatever. I remember our best year, or the most shows we played in a year. I don't know if it was our best. Maybe it was. That we played like 55 in a year. But like, it totally wasn't enough. And we weren't stressed, but that's all we could handle. We're trying to hold down jobs. We're trying to do this. We're probably a little too busy with, just living life, having a good time rather than maybe as focused as we could have been, but it's what you do though, too.
I think it's also a lot of priorities too. Like you prioritized your music. So when you got an opportunity to do it full time, you were able to take advantage of that. It's that old, there is no such thing as good luck. It's preparation for opportunity, right? And I think a lot of guys prioritized getting pussy. They prioritized the hang, the fun.
Yeah, the party and the drinking.
Yeah, or even if they weren't drinkers, like I know a bunch of musicians, bro, that don't drink or even smoke pot or do any drugs. Their thing is they wanted to hang out with their buddies and jam, and they loved the inside jokes and the hang, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's your motivation, you're probably not going to make it in this industry.
Yeah.
You're just not, And I was talking to Montoya last night. He came over. We were working on my project. And
is he part of that?
Yeah, he's going to be doing the singing for it. So it should be great.
Singer.
It should be really great. And I'm talking to him, and he's like, I make enough money now to where I'm not doing this for the money. And I was like, pause, hold on. Like, no, dude, if we were only doing this for the love of music, we would stay right here in the basement or at our rehearsal space. We're playing out and spreading this music for one of three reasons, or a combination of these three. You either want money, fame, or bitches. That's it. Because if it's not about one of those three things, then just hang out with your boys in your basement.
It's true, because you can sit down there, create all this weird experimental shit, and you'd get your rocks off. But we both know, and a lot of people know, when you're in the basement gets old, and you say, I want to show other people. So then that's kind of the fame piece, right?
Yep.
And then
or money.
Yep. Or money.
Bitches.
Well, right.
It's one of those three, or a
three.
combination of them.
There's people that play kind of, and this is a band that I'm currently in right now. We play kind of out there stuff. Now these other guys, this is like I like to call it progressive funk. And
is this coppercore?
No, that's my solo thing.
Okay,
we can talk about that too. But,
yeah, we'll get there.
So this group, I love these guys. We go by Catacosm.
Okay. Catacosm?
Yeah.
Spell that.
CATACOSM.
Okay.
And I swore I would never do a band with a made up name, like word as the name again. That's
all words are made up though.
When I yeah, right. Sure, there you go.
I know what you mean though. I know what you mean.
Yeah, when we did Tapestry, it was pretty frustrating. How do you spell it? How's it? Tapestry? What is it?
Yep.
People forgot it after they left the venue. I feel like that's something that, we could list a million things that probably hurt us, but
I know what you mean though.
It is.
I know what you're getting at.
Yeah. So
if you are going to make some shit up, then play on another word that already is real and easy, like corn.
I was going to say thrice.
It's
a good one.
Yep.
That's a great word, one. Really. But
and made up names do work sometimes. Look at Metallica.
Oh, I know, right?
But it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, it does.
It's got to be a perfect name.
So when I went, I said 2 words. When I named my solo project, this was before Catacosm, I said coppercore. 2 words, start with the same letter so it rolls off the tongue. Both existing words that sound cool together. There's more to it. Coppercore, it's an electronic experimental thing.
Sure.
Lots of things. But when we did Catacosm, we actually initially had a different name, and we started doing Thursday nights at the Acadia Cafe. And we said, we need to name that night. Let's do, and we said Catacosmic Thursdays or something. Or we started saying this. Okay, yeah, that's it. And we started putting on the flyers, and we did about 6 of them. And then the sax player, he's like, hey, I really like the name Catacosm. And we're like, yeah, it's great for the night. And he's like, no, for us. And we all just went, yep. That's the band name now. And
so there's no real meaning behind it.
Cataclysmic, cosmic, all this stuff. You're reaching out. You're, you can get as deep as you want.
Sure.
But so the genre, I mentioned sax player, and then there's electric bass player, and then drums. It's generally very acoustic music, improvised, definitely jazz oriented.
Okay.
But I like to call it progressive funk, because it is a little more rock oriented. I don't like the word fusion, but you can get into all this genre crap. And what I always say is that genres, people are annoyed by it, but to me, it's that is only there to help you promote the band.
Yeah.
When you meet somebody, they want to know what the hell you sound like. So use genres that people are familiar with. That's why it's there. It's a means to an end, but you gotta pick something. So I don't know. We've talked about it. We don't really know the genre, and I hate when people say we don't really fit into a genre, like you're so pretentious. But sure, nobody really fits into a genre, right?
Unless you're copying a genre.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So
Like,
I don't know.
We want to start a new metal band or a metalcore band or a hip hop group, and then even then you have to like be more specific, because even that's too broad. Well, what type of hip hop band? What type of new metal? What type of metalcore?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go like that Kill Switch Engage route. It's like, okay, so you're basically trying to be Kill Switch Engage. Gotcha.
Yeah, right. And then you start. That's the next step. Is right. You name some genres, then you go, who do you sound like? Somebody wants to know. Then you name a few bands, and hopefully, you know, if you list 3 bands that maybe cover your spectrum of sound, right? So I don't know, but I'm actually, even though I was in metal and you knew me from metal, I have a jazz studies degree.
I don't know that I would even call Tepetracy metal.
Oh yeah, we were hard rock, I guess.
Yeah. See, and I've talked about this on the podcast before too. Like, again, the genre thing. It's like there's bands that are like, yeah, I mean, I was in a metal band, and I'm like, no, you weren't. Like, that's not a metal band, dude. Like, I was barely in metal bands, and I screamed like, and it was still fucking barely metal. Yeah. Like, we were cookie cutter metal. If we would have been any less heavy, we would have just been a rock band, you know. And I agree with you that you should use it as a way to promo, and you should use it to your advantage instead of like hating the idea of genres. Use it as a way to become a tool for your promotion. So in other words, like this project I'm working on, some people would be like, oh yeah, I mean, you know, you started a metal band, that's cool. And I'm the one who's like, we're not metal, we're a rock band. Like, that's what we're going to be marketing ourselves off, because it gives me the most broad, generic, and generic is unfairly a negative word. Generic
you think
is
so?
A good thing.
Because I have the antithesis, but I want you to hear what you're saying there.
Well, basically the idea is like, if I keep it generic and I keep it broad enough, I'm not alienating anyone as I'm trying to market to them, because no one hates rock music.
Right.
But a lot of people hate metal or hate emo or hate any of these other specific, when you try to nail it down to try to find your audience, because we want to market to these people. It's like, well, first of all, now you're only marketing to those people, and they might not even like your band. So now, like, let's say there's 1 million fans, right? And you want to be an emo band, but there's only 100,000 emo fans. So now you just alienated 900,000 people. You got 100,000 emo fans, and maybe only 10% of them actually dig your band. So you went from potentially marketing to 1 million people real quick in one decision down to 10,000 people. That's not a good marketing strategy. That's my theory on it. So,
well, it's interesting because I've seen the opposite end of that too.
Where it goes the other way?
Well, yeah, where you can kind of say, hey, I want to call myself a metal band because that shrinks your niche, right? And it says, now I'm going to say, well, we're here. And yeah, you're going to alienate all those rock people that don't like metal, right? But now you've got a smaller group that have better potential to maybe like you if you're falling into that genre, right?
Right.
You know, they talk about niching down, right? And you want to, you know, be focused, right? You know, so then there's also that too. Then you have, rather than 100 so-so fans, you have 10 super fans and that sort of thing.
Sure. Okay.
You know, so there's kind of that side of it too, right?
Yeah.
But like, it also, you know, a lot of people, bands, they don't know how to market themselves. They don't know what genre they are and what, like, who are your fans? You say, well, you know, like dude you had and said, I was in a metal band, and you're like, no, you weren't. Right? I'll show you metal. No, but like,
I'll fucking show you.
So he
metal.
marketed himself possibly as metal, maybe unsuccessfully, because it wasn't, you know, his fans. It's like, you need to know your fans, know what they like and why they like you, you know. It's an interesting thing because it's hard though.
I don't think there's a right answer to it. It's just any of these philosophies are the right philosophy if they're implemented and executed properly. So like me, we can intentionally not market ourselves as a metal band, and as long as we do it correctly, it's great. You know what I mean? Like, but if we fuck it up, and it's like, here's the thing is, you guys are refusing to be labeled a metal band, but that's the type of people that are going to be into your shit. So by you not putting metal, none of these people are willing to listen to you because they only listen to metal, because it's like a fucking religion, right?
I know,
so it's like, oh, I'm into metal, and I don't listen to rock bands. It's like, so it could totally backfire on you 100%. You know, so I get what you're saying, and I could totally see that working, because I could also understand and believe that 10 super fans might be more beneficial to you in the long run than 100 so-so fans. Or 10,000 super fans is better than 1,000,000 so-so fans. Because if they're not going to buy your record or go to your shows or buy your merch or any of that shit, it's worthless. It's like having a YouTube subscriber that never watches your shit. Doesn't matter. You know, there's plenty of YouTubers out there that have 10,000 subscribers and they're making 100 G's a year. And then there's guys out there with 1,000,000 subscribers and they can't even fucking quit their job. And they're only making 40 grand a year at their real job. And they're still struggling. So I don't think any of these things there's a dogma of right or wrong. You know, it's just like music. Like there's no right way to play guitar. As long as you're doing it right. You know,
I've had lots of thoughts about that too, because when you're marketing a lawnmower or a freaking hair dryer, anything, right? There's a specific person that wants that. But like to sell art, right? Itself, that's like, you know, it's so subjective that like it's just a shot in the dark no matter what you do, right? And you got to try and find those people in Weasley Rain and play 250 shows a year and get them to follow you. Like it's a weird thing, like, you know. And I've had people that market apps and stuff that say like, oh dude, you just got to do this and this. I've marketed apps and I said, dude, it's not art though. It's different, man. It's a really unique industry, and it kind of sucks right now though too.
I mean, that's the wildest part is like something changed over the last 60 years. You used to be able to raise a family and potentially put your kids through college just being a gigging musician. You didn't have to be a rock star. Just a gigging musician. Now technically you can still do that, but pretty much only if you're in a really killer cover band. Like I'm not picking up jobber gigs as a drummer or a guitar player and making $5,000 a night unless I'm playing with Prince or Christina Aguilera. Those gigs are few and far between. 40, 50, 60 years ago, you know, whether we're talking the 60s, 70s, 80s, you used to be able to just be a drummer and get jobber calls, and back then you're making $500 a night, which is insane money back then. That's like $5,000 a night now. And you didn't have to be playing for the biggest acts in the world in order to do that. And so that money seems to have disappeared in one end, but then now if you can become a prolific musician, a songwriter specifically, you can make way more money than those guys did back then. So it's like the money rose to the top and then got pulled from the bottom. So now there's this huge disparate difference between income levels. So you got three choices the way I see it. You got to either be top notch at your instrument, like as a drummer or as a guitar player, and become a jobber for big time acts. And the only way you're probably doing that is if you move to Nashville or LA. That's just where all the jobber gigs come from. You know, I've been a jobber here. I don't know if you've been a jobber here. I've gotten the calls, hey, we need you to play 3 dates, Duluth, Minneapolis, and Des Moines. I'm like, okay, send me the set list. I learn the music, and then I show up at those 3 dates. I'm usually responsible for my own travel. That's fine, but it's just not
that's not
reliable.
It's not reliable, and it's not paying enough. You know, so you get it like once a month maybe or something, right?
If that,
But the whole cover your travel, and you know, these bands aren't pulling in what they need to really pull in something.
Unless you're in a Hairball, which is a glorified cover band that's a tribute band for like 5 different or one entire genre. But those guys are making $20,000 a night, and they're playing 3 nights a week, so they're legit pulling in. Still, even during COVID, they're still playing. They're pulling in $20,000 per show. That's a lot of fucking money, even when you're splitting it, or $60,000 per show. No, $20,000 per show, even when you're splitting it between 6 band members and 10 roadies. Everyone's still getting fucking paid, and you're making decent money. And it's either those 2 routes or you become a songwriter and you do your own deal. And that's where I think the real money's at in the long run, as long as you can run your shit like a business. And that's what I was saying earlier when I stopped Jeremy, and I'm like, like, no, we should be trying to make money at this. Like, tell me if this resonates with you. I'm getting really fucking tired of hearing all these musicians in our town saying, well, I don't really do it for the money. It's not about the money. And it's like, cool, I get it. You're trying to sound artistic and pure and like all these cool, fancy things. But at the end of the day, like that mentality is actually what's holding the entire town back. Our entire fucking town can't get their shit together like we did 20 years ago because nobody's willing to say, no, I want to get fucking paid for all this work I put in. Like, you're fucking selling these tickets for $12 a pop. I just sold 1,500 tickets. Do the fucking math. What do you mean you can't afford to pay me X amount of thousands? Like, do the math.
Yeah.
You made $12 times 1,500. That's a lot of fucking money.
It's so hard because it's people wanting to play for free or willing to play
what
for
is
free.
that math?
Not wanting.
Because that's not even
do that.
That's not even an unreasonable number that I just threw out there. Like, there's several venues in town you can sell 1,500 tickets. Calculator. So let's say 1,500 and $12 a ticket is a very reasonable local band price nowadays. I remember when they used to be 5, then they went up to 7, then they were 10, and now they're somewhere between 10 and 15. So I'm just going to say 12. That's 18 grand.
Yeah.
You telling me? And that's just the ticket sales, motherfuckers.
Yeah, not the liquor.
Right? And what you're into the business side of things. Is it? I think is it $20 or is it $40 on average? What a person spends at the bar? I think it's $40, right?
Oh,
I think it is.
Okay.
So 1,500 times $40 per person on average. That's another 60 grand they just made that night. So they literally made $78,000 in this hypothetical situation. And you're trying to tell me you can't afford to give my band 15 grand?
Yeah,
like, we sold those tickets, not you. Those people came to see us. So what do you mean you made 18 grand off the door and you can only flip us $500? Like, no. That's not how this works. You get the booze, we get the tickets. That's a typical door deal, right? This is ground level. This isn't even fucking high level music industry shit here. You see what I'm getting at?
Oh, no, I know.
But bands are afraid to ask for that and demand that.
They do that. And then also it's like, just like as soon as you start playing in a new band, right? You're like, we just need to get out there, get our feet wet. So you start playing these free shows. But once you're doing the free shows, you're stuck in the free, this venue's like, well, you guys played for free last time. It's like, then it's even harder to negotiate that.
Correct.
Like, hey, this time we need to get paid. That's like a harder negotiation because you already did it once.
Yep.
And so they pay, and I feel like a lot of, you said that about the city, and I definitely think that happens in Duluth too.
I bet.
And
it's the same problem, just a smaller town.
Yeah, and people are, it's a smaller town, it's laid back. People are doing, there's a lot of jam bands and there's jazz music there too, and it's great. There's great music there, but I don't see them out enough, and maybe I'm missing some people or whatever too, so I don't want to miss those people, but I don't see them coming to the cities, every 6 months, and we're from Duluth, and like touting this whole thing. Like, I don't see it, and
they feel like they got to bail. Look at you guys, Tepetracy. So you guys stayed successful in Duluth when you came to Minneapolis, but you moved to Minneapolis to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I'm not criticizing for. I'm just, we got to point this out because it's kind of like our little baseline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trampled by Turtles, Bob Dylan. There's a lot of prolific bands and artists that came out of Duluth, and they all left. Nobody stayed and built the scene in Duluth and then kept going back to Duluth. You guys would go back to Duluth and play shows.
Yeah.
And I remember, on a fun, positive side of all this shit, there are certain bands that can monopolize certain markets. And Tepetracy was one of those bands in Duluth. So you guys, when you first came down here, you guys couldn't get more than 50 people to a show. No, I remember this. It took tough. You guys were probably here, I would say, at least 10 years in the cities, at least 10 years. And I would say it took you 2 years, the first 2 years, before you got more than 50 people to regularly come to your shows.
And that's the thing. And I, not to toot the horn, I feel like a lot of musicians in this town, they liked us, as musicians. It was more of a musician's music a little bit. There's some odd meters, there's some changes, and I was proud of that.
And the musicianship too.
Yeah. And so the musicians liked it. So then these bands that are pulling more people, they always ask us to open.
Well, there was also a secret going on, because back then when you guys first jumped in, we still had a semblance some semblance of an industry in our scene.
True. Yeah.
We had some leadership, we had some organization, and everybody knew that you guys could draw 1,000+ people easily in Duluth, like easily. And so it's
a little high, but
that's what it was. That's what people said.
Sure.
Like, they easily draw 1,000 people in Duluth. And it was like, even if it's half that, 500 people, it doesn't matter. That's as good as the crowds we're getting right now in the Twin Cities. So the idea was buddy up with the Tepetracy guys and let them come down. They're a great band, so they're not going to fuck up your show. Even though they can't draw anybody, it doesn't matter. Buddy up to them, because then we can get on that Duluth show.
Oh, and we loved bringing friends up. It was that was our thing, and I did almost all the booking. Everybody had their role, and I was doing a lot of booking promotion. And I mentioned making flyers earlier. I recognized your font.
Yeah,
but it would be like our Duluth show would be, we would grab another Duluth band that we would find, that lives there, that can promote the show, since we're living in the cities.
And they'd open, right?
They would open.
Yeah.
We would bring a city's band and sandwich them. I like to sandwich them to get ultimate exposure, I thought. And then we would play last, and we would play an extra.
So you do a 3-bill band.
Yeah, we usually do 3-bill.
Or a 3-band bill.
Promoters up there, they want, why can't you just play by yourself? Because they're used to a lot of cover bands. Otherwise, like they were confused. They're like, come on, why are you bringing, and then you got all this changeover time. They're like, well, no, we're cross promoting, and we want to put on a show. We don't just want to go there and just play a bunch of our tunes.
This is one of the problems, is you have basically people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about trying to have an input as to how you book your show. This is a perfect fucking example, Robin.
Yeah.
Because you got a guy who's used to a cover band going, come on, how come you guys can't just play longer? I mean, why? And now we got changeover time and all this equipment, and it's so much work. And it's like, dude, you don't get it. Yeah. Like, that person shouldn't even be involved with the show. Like, if you have an opinion and you don't know what you're talking about, you shouldn't be allowed in the room. You know what I mean? Like if you, I know that sounds insane. So for the listeners, bear with me.
That's Jared. That's how he talks.
But this is the truth, though. This is the truth, though, because like, you are actually not only not helping the industry, but you're actually hurting it. Yeah. Because when Tepetracy breaks up, the next band that tries to book your show doesn't have the draw, or in other words, equity, and the balls to tell you you're wrong to your fucking face and then do it the right way. Most bands, like you said, willing to play for free. They're grateful just for the opportunity, which is fine when you're a brand new band. But when you're trying to do something legit, those are the guys who will actually, like I said, not only not help your situation, but they'll actually fucking ruin it. Yeah. Because they'll be like, nah, Tepetracy, we did that for them because they could, they were from here and they really drew. So we're just not going to do that anymore. Now we're just going to focus on the cover bands. It's easier for us. We make just as much money, and there's only one band and no changeovers. That's bad for the industry. Yeah. It's also bad for fans and consumers, and it's also bad for the bands.
I feel like it hurt us too, because we did end up doing a show where we played the whole night. We're like, fuck it, we're going to do the whole thing. And you play every tune you've ever written, and you play for 3 hours, and everybody got a full dose of Tepetracy, where they were fulfilled for a long time, and the next time we went up, they were still fulfilled, so they didn't come out the next time.
Yep.
Like, that's what I feel like when we do, a 50-minute type set, or maybe an hour. If you're headlining, right, you do a full hour. Yep. Everyone else did 45 or something. Yep. Like, the hour was like just a good amount of time where you can get all the good songs you wanted in there, but then they still wanted a little more at the end. So they're coming next time, and
that's rule one of performing. Leave them wanting more. And that's why we don't play for 3 hours, because we're not fucking Metallica, right? We don't have a library of hits to sustain that kind of indulgement for 3 fucking hours. At the end of our show for 3 hours, people are ready to go home.
Yeah.
That means we failed. Like, you need to get off stage and people start screaming one more song.
Yeah.
If they don't say one more song, you played too long. That's why, do you remember, fuck, the guys are going to eat me alive. The old sound guy for Station 4 had long, curly hair.
Yep, he looked
badass.
He looked like young Tom Araya.
Yeah.
We always called him Tom Araya. That's why I can't remember his name. Wait, Anthony.
Is it Anthony or Bobby?
think
I think it's Anthony. I think you're right. Either way, he was a huge fan of the 20-minute set. Which when I first jumped onto the scene, I was like, I ain't fucking playing for 20 minutes. It's like 3 songs, 4 songs.
Yeah,
like, fuck that. However, and I'm still not the biggest fan of the 20-minute set, but now I understand. However,
I'm more cool with the 30-minute.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I'm more cool with a 30-minute set than even a 40-minute set, because even at a 40-minute set, most bands locally or even on a mid-level national act when you're touring, you still don't have enough hits to fill a full hour or even 40 minutes in a lot of spots. But a half hour, you can come in, smack everybody in the fucking mouth, and then get the fuck out of there, and they still want more. Now you have a set that could potentially be all killer, no filler.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's the secret. When you do that, when you get that ratio, that's when you're starting to really gain some steam. And the easiest way to do that is, instead of putting pressure on yourself to write, oh guys, we only have 35 minutes worth of music, we need to write another song so we can play this show next week. Wrong.
Yeah.
Cut a song from your set and play for 35 minutes and take the reputation hit from that booking agent. What the fuck, man? I booked you for 40 minutes. You only gave me 35. Sorry, dude. It was best 35 minutes though.
Yeah.
Like, it was the best we could. If we would have given you 40 minutes, 5 of that minute of that 40 would have sucked.
Yeah.
So we gave you 35 badass minutes. Unless you're in a battle of the bands. If you're in a battle of the bands, you will literally lose points for not filling out your time. So that's when you add in a cover.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're really desperate to extend your set, do that. Add in a couple covers then. If you're an all original band and you only have 20 minutes worth of music and you booked a 30-minute set, do 2 covers.
Do you like covers?
In general, no. But I see, and I hate cover bands, because I believe cover bands' existence is also one of the things that has literally crushed the original music industry, because it's just too, like we just said earlier with the Duluth guy, it's too easy for bars to book one band and make a lot of money off of a cover band versus doing original music.
Well, these are pop hits that
Right.
everybody wants to hear, right? I think their existence is it needs to be, but I don't really like them.
We do covers in my project, but we're doing them in a very different way.
Yeah.
So here's what we're doing. I've got a list of about 10 to 15 covers, and we're not going to cover them. I'm also not going to rewrite them like some guys do. They completely break it down to its core elements.
I do love that.
And then rewrite them. I like that. I'm just not good enough to do it. So here's what I do is I take the song as is, and I switch up the chords, not the chord progression, but let's say they're playing a standard power chord. Sounds like a cheesy Metallica riff or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will expand that chord to use all 6 strings as if I wrote that song. And I'll do that with the entire song. So I'll completely revamp the chords while paying as much homage to the original song structure, chord progression, melodies, harmonies. I try to pay as much homage as I can to the original version.
Sure.
But act as if that song was written today in this room with me on guitar. I wouldn't have picked those guitar chords. Even if we're picking the exact same chord progression, that's not the way I would have finished that song.
Yeah.
So then when I'm doing my covers, they actually kind of sound like us. And then the second thing I'm doing is I'm trying to pick songs that aren't primarily guitar driven. So biggest challenge I've ever done in my life is I take songs that are almost exclusively keyboards, and then I transpose everything onto 2 guitars, and then I rewrite that song as a rock song, like the way we do it. You know what I mean?
I like that. I love when a band completely flips a cover upside down, and I love that so much. So we talked.
I think we're more flipping on its side. I don't think we're good enough to go upside down.
Right.
Just like a slight, like leaning tower of Pisa.
Just knock
like,
it over with your elbow. But
and then we rotate 1 or 2 out for every set. So I don't ever want to be the band that plays that cover, like an Alien Ant Farm, or because that happened with the Tyrants, that rock band I was in.
Yeah.
We had this killer version of Highway to the Danger Zone. I'm standing outside one night for some club, I can't remember what it was, and I hear these 2 dudes behind me, and they're like, dude, have you heard that new fucking local band, the Tyrants? And dude's like, no. And he's like, you gotta check these guys out. They fucking kill it. Like, these guys are awesome. I just seen them at Spring Street 2 weeks ago, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden dude goes, is that the band who does the Highway to the Danger Zone cover? And he goes, yeah. And guy goes, they are awesome. And I was fucking
You're
furious.
Hey, you had fans though, man. Come
True,
on.
but no one sets out with the intent, I want to be known for our cover.
Yeah,
no one ever does that. And so when that became what we were known for, it pissed me off. So when I started this project, I said, we'll still do covers for all the obvious reasons we just mentioned, plus all the ones we didn't mention, but we're going to rotate them out. That way nobody knows us for a cover. We do covers, but we sparse them in and out and rotate them. So every night we're playing 1 or 2 different covers, and then we have just a roster of them that we can throw in and out of the set.
That's good.
Keep it a little fresh, but then also prevent ourselves from being branded as that band.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Totally. And, and that's something Metallica was not known for a cover.
Correct.
They were known for doing covers, but I mean, obviously their songs were,
and they also picked super obscure covers, which helped them a lot.
Oh, yeah. And I love that. And the reason
until they did Bob Seger, Turn the Page.
I still liked it.
I think it's a good tune too, but it was the only cover they ever did that people knew the original version as well, if not better.
Right. Yeah, true. A couple on that Garage Inc. one.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. There's more than one on there.
Gone.
Tuesday's Gone was one of them, and then there was one more, Whiskey in the Jar by is it
with
Thin
Lizzy?
Lizzy? Yeah.
But the reason I play music is because of Metallica. I loved other stuff, and until I found Metallica and I heard the song Enter Sandman, and I go,
that was the first one for
sick.
you.
Listen to those drums. It's loud at the beginning. Right? Yeah, it was like the coolest thing I ever heard in my life. And that's the reason, and so...
Especially the way he tuned the drums. They were so low and thunderous
huge.
compared to every drummer back then. And Lars was...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Huge.
They were so big.
Those mounted toms that should have been floor toms.
Right?
But I thought that was awesome. So going for that, I always loved cover songs. I thought it was the coolest thing. They're doing cover songs. So I got into that. And so I talked about my group, Copper Core, or my solo project.
Yeah. Oh,
I brought you a CD.
Sweet.
Hey, do you know how these work?
I think I've seen these before in the past. I think you put them in something. I think there's a laser that works with these. Oh my God. Let's show this to people. Hold on.
Yeah, you gotta.
I think it's easier.
That's why I brought it. It said, and that is to remind myself, this picture right here is to remind myself not to take myself too seriously. So you can't really see the picture, and then
ridiculous.
I'm holding a drum in my arms. There's a big pile of sludge and electronics, and I'm mixing it with a drumstick.
Yep. Looks like you're making cake batter.
Yeah.
I love that, dude,
I'm even in a kitchen. Like,
I've
I found a friend
this...
that'll let me use a kitchen.
Really? Like a real kitchen?
Yeah, like a commercial
That's
kitchen.
Sick, dude. I've been saying this for years, and I'm glad you said that, because this is one of the things I've been trying to tell people is, like, whether it's a boss at a job, like, listen, I don't take myself very seriously, but I take what I do extremely seriously. And that's because there's time involved. Right? So don't take yourself seriously, but understand there's only so many minutes in a day, and there's only so many days in your life, and that time you're spending should matter. Like, if your only thing is seeking comfort, you will die unfulfilled.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my whole mantra over these last few years as I've been trying to get my shit together, is like, no, I want to keep where I'm at, the silly innocence, and I don't take myself super seriously, but like, we got to take what we do seriously. And I noticed that in your shit, like, you're a silly, kind person, but at the same time, like, you don't fuck around. There's no fuckery in your day to day. Like, this is one of those things where you're kind of one of the first cats that I knew where we were both amateurs, and you decided to become a pro. Everyone else continued to be amateurs. All the other pros I knew, I met them when they were pros. So I don't know a lot of musicians that came from where I came from and got to where we all got. Most people that are pros, I met them when I became a pro. Very few people have done the journey we've actually done that I knew beforehand, is what I'm getting at. So like the Zach Boyd, he was already a pro when I met him. Fucking Alex, would be one of the other ones where I watched him go from
Wally.
amateur to pro. Like, he was in 6,
Yeah.
and he was an okay guitarist.
6.
And then he fucking got in a car accident. We talked about it on the podcast. Rolled his vehicle, fucked up his hand. I think it was his left hand he fucked up. And part of his physical therapy was playing guitar. And he came out of the hospital, like, I don't know how many months later, a dramatically better guitar player. And then it didn't stop. He just kept getting better and better. And all of a sudden he joined one band and then another band and then another band. And then that band broke up. They reformed that band. And within 2 years, they were signed to Prosthetic Records. So there's only a handful of us that have done that. The Wallies, the Riches, they were already pros by the time I met all those guys, you know? And it's interesting to watch that mindset, because you can kind of see at the beginning who has the potential, but potential doesn't mean shit. Right? You know what I'm saying? It really doesn't. And talent doesn't really matter that much either. It's mostly discipline and work ethic. That's what I mean. Tell me if I'm wrong. No, but that's what I've noticed.
I don't like when people talk about, they were born with talent. I mean, so there's people that might be arrogant enough to say, yeah, I was born with talent. I don't practice, and I just was kind of born with it. You know, and they can say that, and that's fine. But I think they're lying.
I do too.
I think that they spent hours and hours and hours and hours of focused whatever they were working on, like to get there, you know, and the people, they'll only say it because they're arrogant enough to say it if you know, I don't practice or whatever, you know, but it takes time. There's a cool story. I think it's about Joe DiMaggio, baseball player. And he had an interview and somebody's at his house and he's talking and it's like, you know, they talked about, well, how do you feel about like, or do you feel lucky that you were born with like this talent, that you're a great hitter and you can do this? And he says, come downstairs. He comes downstairs and it's real dark and there's a bat and kind of, I don't know, some swinging setup. And he went down there and he would call out all these pitches. He would say, low and away. And he would do it 5 times. And he'd say, high. And he'd go, high and inside. And he would do all these, and he'd swing 50 times right in front of this guy. And then he went over and he turned on the light and he put a hash mark on the wall. And there was thousands and thousands of hash marks on the wall from when he did this.
Wow.
And I thought that was a really cool story. He said, don't say I was born with this. Right. I worked on it, you know, like he was frustrated from it. You know, he was real about it. And I thought it was a cool story because
it is a cool story.
Yeah, I don't think that you're born with talent. You might have some innate interest and excitement and maybe, you know, the way you think works well with what you're into.
I heard Russell Wilson say something similar, a little bit more philosophical about it. He said, talent is what God gave you when you were born. Sorry if you guys don't believe in God. This is his words. Talent is what you're born with. Skill is what you do with that talent. And so, yeah, you could have natural talent to stay on beat. You're rhythmically inclined. You could have perfect pitch. Fine. But unless you fucking hone that into a craft, it's useless. Talent is literally useless because eventually talent fades and somebody else is going to be more talented than you. And you see this in sports all the time. The gifted athletes that have just been good their whole life, suddenly they're in the NFL and they're average or they're not even in the league anymore.
When, you know, they get a couple breakout years, they look great, but then everybody reviews their tapes and like, here's how we stop them.
Yep.
And this guy isn't working on his craft, trying to stay a step ahead,
exactly
right?
What it is.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So it's...
And I think I've seen a lot of musicians say that as well. Famous ones, local ones, and everyone in between. I've seen this. I am not even close to the best musician I know. It's not even fucking close. And it's not even fucking close for the people that I've seen be laid to wake in my dust. Like, I've gone much farther in my music career than a lot of people that are more talented than me. Because they didn't have the fucking work ethic. They didn't have the discipline. Like, yeah, I got some natural talent, but not only do I practice, but it's also the way I practice. Like, I am very, like, I can, let me put it this way. I can improve my skills in a half hour to 2 hours of drumming or playing guitar because of the way I practice. Where some other people might have to do it for 8 hours in order to get the same level of productivity. Goes to that old 10,000 hours to be an expert thing.
I heard Tom Morello say a similar thing because he said he used to practice 8 hours a day when he was younger, and he's like, don't do that. It's bad for your social life, and really, if you have better ways of practicing, you don't need to spend 8 hours. Is what he said.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of truth to that because most people probably don't need that. And I read this on Reddit recently. Somebody was like, "Oh, 10,000 hours is bullshit. 40 hours a week times this many. I think it ended up being like 8 years." He's like, within 8 years, I should have been an expert, and I'm still no better than I was 5 years ago. And the very next comment was exactly what I was thinking. And it's like, it's not just putting in the 10,000 hours. It's putting in the 10,000 hours while understanding what you're trying to accomplish.
Like quality hours, focused hours, not, 5 beers in jamming with your buddies.
Right.
I don't know how much better you're getting.
Right. And if you're just jamming, you're not doing anything. You're just playing.
You're playing stuff you already
But if you're jamming and you're going, oh, you know what? Every time I do this one move, I'm a little sloppy on here. And then for the next 45 minutes, while you're still jamming on that part, writing music with your buddies, you're actually also working on your guitar playing technique. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how you get better. Whether it's drumming, singing, playing guitar, fucking framing in a house.
Yeah, right.
Driving a limo. It doesn't matter. Like, be the best you can be by really understanding and focusing on how to do that. And that's it's really that simple. It's like, make sure that the practice you're putting in makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I could sit there and do pull-offs for 6 hours on one fret. Well, I practiced pull-offs for 6 hours. No, you didn't. You didn't. Like, if you really want to practice pull-offs for 6 hours, you should go finger 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all the way up and down the strings, all the way up and down the neck, because the frets change size as you move up the neck, right? So your pull-offs way up here are going to be physically a different movement than way down here where you're spread out. Mm-hmm. That is a very simple analogy, but it's dead on. Like, you just sitting there on one fret doing pull-offs for 6 hours is fucking meaningless in the long run.
Yeah.
That you made one finger really good at doing pull-offs on one string on one fret. You got really comfortable in one spot.
Yeah, why can't you? String,
or the low E or the middle A, whatever. Why can't you go down and do that same thing and sound that perfect on the first fret? Well, the string's tighter. No, that's the correct answer when you're talking about physics. The actual correct answer is because you didn't fucking practice pulling off on the first fret, bitch. Yeah, so you're not used to the extra tension from the strings.
Yeah.
Fuck off. Like, it's really, and it's not complicated. This isn't rocket science.
Well, so I teach some lessons. I used to teach more. I taught at a music academy and stuff, but I don't now. And I teach some lessons out of my house, but over Zoom now. But
right.
I would always say it is, a lot of these kids, they're gonna run around and they're gonna, the day before their lesson, they haven't really practiced and they're gonna put in 2 hours or something, But that's not going to be, you need to spread out your time, right? So I always say, it's better to do just 10 minutes for 5 different days in a week than 2 hours on Saturday. Yep. Even though that's collectively only 50 minutes in a week versus 2 hours on Saturday, it's still going to go a lot further. You spread that out, give yourself 5 minutes. You only have 5 minutes. Go and do some rudiments or whatever. And you can, every day if you touch it, know?
Yeah, I agree. Like let's stick with the rudiments thing. So, classic paradiddles, right? Mm-hmm. You got right, left, right, left, right, right. Okay, it's right, left, right, right.
Yeah.
Paradiddle, and then you switch paradiddle, 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 right? And you just keep alternating back and forth. Well, you could spend 6 hours on your drum set on Sunday doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. The problem is you're not going to come back to it till next Sunday. If you took, and let's say you have a half-hour drive to work every day. You see where I'm going with this?
Right, yeah.
On your steering wheel, twice a day for 30 minutes, you can do the exact same exercise. And I guarantee you will get faster in literally 5 hours a week instead of 6 hours a week because you're slow dosing it. You're never burning out your mental fatigue. You're never burning out your physical conditioning, right? Because if you sit there for 6 hours and you don't have the physical conditioning for this, you'll start getting tired and fatigued, which will affect your actual playing. Well, now you're not even practicing properly because you're not physically able to keep your strokes the same. Mm-hmm. That's going to fuck with you, right? Unless you're specifically going out of your way to train for a show. Well, I got to be able to do this at the end of the show when I'm exhausted. Fine. Then fucking go jogging first, right? Go jogging for 40 minutes and then come do your half-hour paradiddles. Because just doing this is not the same as being physically exhausted at the end of the show, right?
Yeah.
Plus, you're coming back to it after several hours. So you do it a half hour in the morning on the way to work, then you work for 8 hours, then you do it a half hour on the way home, then you got another 8 hours where you're not doing shit, 8 hours where you're sleeping, and your brain will continue to solve problems while you're sleeping. And then the next morning, you notice a change. You're like, holy fuck, man. My left hand isn't nearly as weak as it was yesterday. What the fuck happened? Nothing happened. Nothing happened. You just slowed your fucking your growth down to a point where your body and your brain could actually digest it, and you could see that measurable change. You could do the 6 hours once a week on Sundays, and it could take you 6 weeks to see the same improvement that you could get in 2. I hear fucking weightlifters and fight trainers say the same thing. Like, you know how a lot of guys do their max reps, max weights, and then they have to take 2 or 3 days off to fucking recover before they can get back at it again. There's several guys out there that are moving towards, let's do half of your max weight and half of your max reps every day. Because then you don't need that physical recovery time. You don't need that mental recovery time. We don't have to replace a day of lifting with a day of cardio. We can do whatever we want. And they believe it builds what he called farmer strength over time. So like, I may not look as big, but I'm actually just as strong as you. And I have like, I don't know how he explained, but basically it's like I can sustain my strength for a longer period of time throughout a fight. So at the end of the fight, even though you're 20 pounds heavier than me, you're getting gassed because you got all this muscle mass and your physical body is only used to being able to do this insane workout for 5 minutes. Well, in a 5 round fight, that's 25 minutes worth of fighting. This motherfucker's been conditioning himself like he's been working on a farm lifting hay bales for 8 consecutive hours with 2 15-minute breaks and a lunch break.
That term, farm strength.
Yeah. It's a real thing. And it's like, we used to fucking run into this. I warned a bunch of people. Nobody had ever heard of this on the local scene until me. We were at Star Central, and this bouncer didn't know I had a deal worked out with the owner, Ken, to promote my show at the Rock. So we're playing at the Rock, and I had a deal with Ken where I would be allowed to go inside Star Central and pass out my flyers for the Rock, because Bill allowed me to go to the Rock and pass out flyers for my show at Star Central. Right? Makes sense. The bouncer didn't know about this. So he's like, you can't pass those flyers out here. And I was like, fuck you. Yes, I fucking can. And he grabbed me by my shoulder and with my backpack on and started pulling me. So I tried to like rip his arm off me, and I couldn't move his arm. So I turned around, and then he grabbed me by both the straps on my backpack. And I was like, this dude's my size. I'm strong as fuck. So I'm going to pick this dude up, and I'm going to sweep his legs and throw him on the ground. And then I'm just going to walk away. Dude, I couldn't budge him. I couldn't lift him up. I couldn't trip him. I couldn't get his arms off of me. He's my fucking size, but he had 30 years on me. And like, I'm like, okay, this old man strength is fucking real. And I started telling people about old man strength, and they're like, whatever, dude, you're fucking crazy. And then sure as shit, that bouncer ended up getting in more and more fights with dudes on the scene. He didn't work there very long. He really fucked up that night and got reprimanded. And then he did this a couple more times over the next couple months and eventually got fired. But dude, there was bigger dudes than him that were like, don't fuck with that bouncer. Like, that dude will fuck you up. He's so strong. He's Jared's size, but he's like the Rock's level of strength. Like, it was so intense. It was so fucking hard. Man. And yeah, old men strength, it's the same theory as that farm strength shit. They got 40 years of fucking refining those muscles into just pure, I don't even know what the word is for it, but it's a real thing. There's something that actually happens to that.
I definitely have seen that.
Yeah, it's fucking, definitely agree. It's fucking wild, dude. And yeah, I think that theory where we started with this is like, I'm not telling people not to practice for 8 hours a day. If you're practicing for 8 hours a day, make sure it's efficient and it's effective.
Yeah.
I think is what we're both saying is you don't have to practice for 8 hours a day, and there's ways you can be just as effective, if not more effective, by actually having more, like, let's steal a line from Bad Boys, fucking, it's about quality time, not quantity time. right?
Yeah,
Like you got to spend quality time on your instrument, not quantity time. Just sitting there playing and smashing a snare drum is not going to make you better at playing the snare drum.
No.
You know what I mean? And a lot of guys don't even understand the like drumming specifically, the little idiosyncrasies, right? So like it's actually more important to hit your drums lighter. But most of us, especially me, guys like us that are naturally hard hitters, unless we can see that or somebody explains it to us, you'll see a lot of drummers that are good and they're out there doing pure single strokes and smashing the shit out of their drum heads. You know what I'm talking about because you've seen it a million times. Those motherfuckers.
Laying into the drum and not rebounding, just like, you know.
You know what my favorite one is? I had a drumstick over here is when they hold the stick like this and they're malleting everything. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you got to loosen up on that back end and let it toggle or let it teeter, however you want to refer to it. Because there's physics there too. Like that's why you break your cymbals is because you're smashing it like a mallet in the middle of the cymbal. Like lighten up on your hold, go to the side of the cymbal and swish it off to the side.
Yeah.
You're pushing that force away from the center of the cymbal.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand this, man. You hit that cymbal, the shock wave goes through the cymbal, goes to the outer edge of the opposite side, and then comes back like a ripple in a water hitting the wall on a pool.
Yeah.
Like it bounces and then comes back. Well, when those two shock waves meet again, because that's the other thing is this first one goes, hits this thing, and comes back. Well, there's already another one going. And when they meet in the middle, that's when you fucking get cracked cymbals. Easiest way to avoid that, move over to the side of the cymbal. Hit it 3/4 of the way off to the side, and when you hit it, move in an outward motion, and you'll notice your cymbal will start spinning, and it'll stop flopping. Little tiny things like this, not only do they preserve the life of your drums, but they'll also preserve your energy and your ability to continue to play.
Maybe your wrist too, depending on
right?
what you're doing.
Yeah, you won't develop sudden bursts of carpal tunnel or tendonitis or any of that wild shit.
Yeah. We were talking about cover songs earlier. I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Because I love redoing covers. And I'm a big... So, my birthday's on Halloween.
On Halloween, like the 31st?
On the 31st.
Sick.
So, I don't know if that chose me or I chose it. Right? But
little of column A, little of column B.
You're right. But I'm a huge horror movie fan. I actually do my own horror movie night once a month. I have some buddies over. I make a list of 5 movies that have a theme, and we vote on it, and then we watch whatever. We usually watch 2 or whatever. But I love horror movies. I love horror movie video games or horror video games. I like scary music, all this stuff, right? So this copper core thing I got going, this is solo. Okay, so I'll tell you a little about it too. I use Ableton Live. You familiar?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I got electronic sounds. I've got loops. I got things. These are
if
all...
People don't know what he's talking about. Ableton is like Pro Tools or Logic. It's a recording software.
Yeah, but it's got like I think unmatched live capabilities.
It is definitely the best one for if you're doing shit live.
Yeah, and a lot of DJs use it.
Yep.
And so I'm writing loops, I'm writing melodies and things, and I trigger everything, and I start and stop things, and I also add a bunch of effects to everything.
Keep going.
Okay, so and I'm putting effects to it, layers of effects, and I change the song, and I improvise, and everything loops, and then I navigate the song as I go.
And you're talking about your cover?
Oh, this is my original music. So and that whole album is 11 tracks of that, all original, my own loops, my own everything.
Sick.
And then it's got live drums on it. So I'm navigating the whole tune all by myself. And then that can be
so
very
are you
different.
sampling the loops first and then playing to them?
Yeah, I build them up. Yeah, okay. I might make them sound a certain way, affect them out, a bass line, a melody line, some sort of pad, maybe a percussive sound. And I got all these loops I can mute and unmute, and I can drop out the bass and just groove for a minute and then have the bass drop back in.
That's really cool. I've seen some of your videos online where I've noticed you queuing shit up as you're playing, and I want to get into more of that later on how you're doing that. Maybe we'll save it for after the podcast because I don't know how interested people would be in the tech side of it. But I noticed that, and I was like, that's really impressive. He's clearly got something going on there, some sort of controller on the side. Yeah, so remind me when we wrap up, because I want to get into that with you, because I think there's some ways I can integrate some of that even into possibly the podcast. So we'll get to that later.
Sure. Well, so So that's how I do my original stuff. But like I said, I like covers, and so I've come up with a list of, horror movie themes, song. I want to do all these covers, but I'm big in electronic music myself, so I just want to fuck them up like hard, just change them. So I don't want to just knock them over my elbow. I want to flip them upside down.
Right.
So that's the thing I'm excited to do, and I've got like a horror album that I'm working on.
Really?
And every summer it's like I got to get on it so it's ready by Halloween.
Right.
But then summer
never happens.
runs away, and then it's September, and right now, and it's like, man, I got like 2 months now to get this done, and it's not gonna happen. But I got like friends sent me like infant baby cries, and I like fuck it all up. And I mean, I'm actually looking to make this like haunted. Like a haunted house music, somebody's got like one of them walkthrough things.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'll play this off of Spotify instead of whatever else.
Instead of Monster Mash.
Yeah, or something. So, but I'm working on that. I'm really excited about all that. And you probably saw one of my tracks on there. I did a playthrough of one of my original tracks, but I want to do more playthroughs as well of just drum playthroughs, and that might be annoying. But what I did was like my one playthrough that's gotten some okay traction. Nothing big, but I did DJ Shadow, Building Steam with a Grain of Salt. I don't know if you know the tune, but it's all sampled stuff.
Do.
It's like a mid-90s DJ album, DJ Shadow. Okay. And it's got like this beat repeat effect that goes on, so it's like and then like it messes with the beat, but it all stays in time, So I wrote that whole thing out. And then I played it along with the track, and it's on YouTube right now. And I got nobody had done it. I first searched for like anybody do this, and then I did that also with a.
Let's see if we can pull this one up. I want to test this. Let's see if this actually works.
Okay, you should. I was pretty happy with how this turned out. It is pretty tricky. It took me a little bit to work it out because it's, it's fast because it's all, like they just beat repeat it. See if you can get it up. But I also did it with the track by Little People, if you're familiar with that. Sort of they're like a chill wave electronic. I would say trip hop is really, I think, the closest term. But that's a cool album too.
Music.
It's all right.
Stupid.
It was a bit of a fad. It's kind of fading. I actually think the idea of it's kind of cool a little bit. It's just a little different, than everything else.
I don't know. It was like I don't even want to talk about trap music.
Then let's not, because I don't really care to talk about it either.
But when you said what did you call it?
Trip hop.
Yeah, trip hop. That's what reminded me of it. And it's like, again, we're getting into this genre thing.
Yeah,
silly fucking no, it's not hip hop. It's trippy hip hop, and we call it trip hop.
Yeah, right.
It's like, fuck off. God.
So I think it's just under my name. But if you did DJ Shadow Building Steam with a Grain of Salt. Since I'm the only one that's done a drum playthrough.
Let's see if this pulls up.
Not too high. See, it's not that high on the search results, but you're gonna have to do.
I might be able
just
to
do my
put
name.
Your name in here.
That should pull it. There it is.
There it is. So we had to add your name. Okay, let's see if this works. We should be able to hear this, no problem. I just don't know if they're going to be able to hear it. So let's do this. I'll share the TV. They can see what we searched here for. Building Steam with a Grain of Salt, Robin Rapsys. It's this first top one right here. We will be able to hear this just fine. It's not. They can't hear it. It's not coming through.
Oh, it's not.
No, but that's fine. At least now I know we won't get pulled. Because every once in a while, YouTube doesn't like you playing other people's YouTube shit.
You might recognize this tune.
I'm glad we pulled this up because this reminded me of something I wanted to talk to you about anyways. It's actually two things I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
I think the video's off-synced with the audio, but it's not super noticeable. Yeah, that's pretty dope, dude. It's pretty good. It's really hard for a lot of drummers to play this slow and methodical and just like punch those beats like a John Bonham style. So many guys want to just busy the shit out of this.
Right.
You know, let me show off. Let me, and it's just like, again, we were talking about like being humble about your playing and stuff, right? And like paying homage to the tune and shit. And it's like, no, this is really good. Like I can hear it.
I'm like note for note on that tune.
What? So there's two things I wanted to talk to you about, or ask you about. So I told you, and I think you're still doing them. I stopped playing the game. You did Name That Tune.
Oh yeah,
for a long time, and then people would guess the name of the tune, and then you started putting
bass just on the drums.
Yep, just on the drums. There's no music. It's just you drumming, and you'd say name that tune or guess that tune or whatever, and then you started saying don't put the name of the song in the comments. Just say got it. And I was like, I hate this game now. Because like I want to know if I'm right or not, right? And when I just say got it, there's no follow-up. There's no way for me to know if I'm right or wrong.
Somebody else said that to me too.
It drives me nuts. You got to go back to letting people name the song.
I think that people, yeah, I've learned that, right? And I think somebody said, well, what's the end game, right? Like, so you want to know eventually, you can figure it out. Like, you don't just sit there and not know. Like, then fuck you, I'll never do it again, right?
Yep.
It's like, so somebody said, what you should have them, message you, and then you can tell them if they're right or wrong. Or you can tell them the answer, in a interaction. Or
that's better than nothing.
Or wait a week and then put the answer, or say you were right.
So this is what I think you need to do. I think he's stumbling on a version of the right answer. I'm just going to be the one that actually comes up with it in full word form. You do exactly what you're doing now. You let people guess in the comments. You come back a week later with the same video, but you added the music. So now we can hear you playing to the song.
Oh, nice.
So now not only can we verify whether our guess was correct or not, we can actually hear it in full effect. Because I might be fucking convinced you're playing this song.
True.
And if you just come back the next week and you're like, repost the video with the answer in there, I'm going to be like, yeah, dude, but here's the thing. That's still this beat. I'm still right. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just making up a random thing, right?
Right, yeah.
But if you play the music behind it, so clearly you have the ability to do that. Now you just unmute all the music and we hear the full version of it. We go, oh, fuck, that's not How the Levee Breaks. That's this song.
Yeah.
And the drum beats are just almost identical. Got it. Okay. Because I like the interaction. I think it's a great way for people to get involved with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the thing, is like, I don't want to say got it. And so I just quit guessing.
Yeah.
I'd watch it. And if I didn't
that.
know, I would just move on. If I did know, every once in a while I'd say got it, but then I would never go back to the post to check on it.
Right.
But when you first started doing them, I would intentionally not look at the comments. I'd put my guess in, and then I'd wait a few hours. I'd come back, find the same I'd actually search you out, find you on Facebook, scroll through your feed, find that video, and then see what everyone else guessed.
Yeah, but then I started blocking people's responses. I say, correct answer, but I blocked it so others can guess. And yeah, there's some of that too. But I mean,
I don't know how you make the balance of not giving away the answer, but you got to let people comment. You're
absolutely right, and that's something I just didn't know. I was rolling with it. I didn't see much of that out there. And my page, robinrapsys.com, it's a very drum centric page. That was my niche, as I talked about earlier. I said, I do home recordings. I work with my brother out in LA, and we do films and stuff. I've been in a number of films. I've had music on Dateline NBC.
That's dope.
He brought me into all that stuff, and I'm super happy. You should also check out my brother's page, ryanrapsys.com, because he's doing cool stuff. He's got cool reels for the films he's scored and stuff. But we've done stuff, and he's connected me with other composers. So I got that piece on there. I got the lessons piece. I got a blog on there. All the projects I'm part of it. It's all about me, right? It makes sense. But it's very much a drum-centric page. If you're into drums.
And people can find you on all your socials by going to your website, right? So if they want to follow you on Insta or Facebook, they can just go to robinrapsys.com and find those links.
It's right on the bottom of every page.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. That's what I'm doing with mine too.
Yeah.
I'll show you after we get done with the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm doing something very similar. I got my own website now, and I'm gonna fucking it's sort of like with the aggregate device. Yeah. It's an aggregate website, right? So it's like everything starts there, gets pushed out, and then everything gets pulled back. It's like a beating heart almost. And way it's causeway, I guess.
Social media is huge, right? But they can still come and go. We knew that with MySpace. It went away. I mean, I don't think Facebook's going away, but at the same time, a website absolutely will never, ever go away.
Right.
You know?
As long as you pay your server bill.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's always a good starting point. I want you to go there. And if you want to do the Instagram, Twitter, whatever, go from there. But, yeah. So, that's my page. And I want to do a lot more videos like that and do more stuff like that.
I liked it. I thought it was cool because, like, for me, that's always been my thing is, like, remember that show, Name That Tune?
Yeah.
I mean, that's always been a game, and it was a radio show for long, but they turned it into a flat-out TV show with Wayne Brady. I think it was on Fox for a while.
Huh.
I was so fucking good at that show. It was ridiculous. Like, I'm so good at naming tunes.
Yeah.
And, you know, they'd be like, I can name it in 10 seconds. And then the next guy'd be like, I can name it in 5. And then somebody would be like, I can name it in 4. And, like, that one dude with a ton of balls would be like, I'll name it in 3 seconds. No one could ever do it within 3 seconds. I would guess that shit within 3 seconds.
Really?
The only time I started getting fucked was on modern day pop music because it sucks, so I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Anything classic, I know.
We're getting old, man, so we just don't listen to that stuff the kids are listening to.
Here's the thing, though, is it's not the same as when our parents talked about the new music because our new music in the 90s still had substance. You know what I mean? Like, look at anyone. Tool. Fucking even Nirvana's lyrics. Stone Temple Pilots. Yeah, there was substance to that music. Yeah. Now, when you listen to fucking what's her name just say "eat my ass" for 10 seconds of her chorus, I think so. Yeah, it's like there's some hoes up in here. There's some ho. It's like this music lacks substance. There's nothing here. Like even early 90s hip hop, the reason all of us as fucking suburban white kids were drawn to it is because they talked about their struggles in their lives and what they dealt with.
Yeah, Tupac
and believe it or not, a lot of suburban white kids were like, I feel this way too. Right? Like I don't need to be black and live in Compton for me to understand this man's life. Like I feel this way living in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. How is this possible? It doesn't matter how. It matters that it was real, and whether we were being authentic is also irrelevant. We felt we could relate and understand this person, this artist, and this music based on the substance in their lyrics.
Yeah.
Not a thing anymore. That's what I mean by that, because it's just like so. Granted, you still have your Adeles, your Amy Winehouse, like even Meghan Trainor was pretty dope. Beyonce's fucking amazing.
Weekend or
Weekend's phenomenal.
I like Billie Eilish enough.
I respect her. I think she's a good songwriter. I'm just not into the style. But I don't have anything negative to say about her, unlike a lot of people, right? Like,
oh yeah,
I give her credit where it's due, but I'm not going to sit there and pretend like I rock Billie Eilish music. That's music for kids. Like, if you're a grown fucking man, 40 years old, and you're a Billie Eilish fan, there's two options. You're either a true bona fide music connoisseur, or most likely you're a fucking weirdo and you need to find music that more accurately represents you and your lifestyle. I'm sorry. That's just, you know, these are my opinions. I'm not right on everything I say, just almost everything I say. But no, I mean, it is what it is, dude, whatever. But there's one more thing that I wanted to make sure I asked you about, because I seen you make a post the other day and I didn't want to make an assumption, and I definitely didn't want to comment on the post just in case I was wrong. You said something, and I'm gonna bullet point your post because it was a long-winded post, but there's a really strong message in there, and we were talking about like you were talking about motivation and work ethic. Like you said, I'll see a drummer doing something with his left hand, and I'll think to myself, I can't do that because of my, and I believe you put CP in initials. And then you said, instead of using that as an excuse for me to not do it or not try, I look for that as a motivation to learn how to do that in spite of, and I think it was CP. Mm-hmm. What is CP?
Okay, so I was born with cerebral palsy.
That's okay. This is what I thought it was, and I didn't want to make that assumption.
You can see straight up, my left hand is considerably smaller, and that isn't from CP. It's from neglect of use because
It's not that noticeable. If anything, I see it in your thumb.
The thumb.
I see it in your thumb more than your fingers.
So these muscles get tight. So I am affected to my left side with cerebral palsy.
Okay.
And I was born with it. What it is brain damage.
Is that why you still play what looks like traditional style?
Yeah, I come from the side. It's a lot of shoulder, which is probably not good for my shoulder. But you know, when you're born, you're doing something. You're interested in something. I said I'm gonna figure it out. I also play in an over 35 baseball league, and I catch with my right hand, put my glove in my arm, and then throw with my right hand.
No shit. Wow.
And I did that through high school and stuff too. I didn't play in college, but like when you want to do something, you figure it out.
So do you bat right-handed then?
I do, but instead of my bottom hand,
or I'm sorry, so you bat right-handed. So your
right hand's on top.
Yep. Okay.
And I bat right-handed, but usually my left hand fingers are not strong enough to stay in the bat, so I end up holding on with my right hand still instead of how people let it go,
right.
like hold it with just their bottom hand.
Have you ever tried switching to get because in baseball I was a huge baseball player and I was pretty good at it. So the swinging the bat, this is why people suck, is because they try to, when you swing, they try to push with their right hand.
Okay.
Is what you want to do is you want to be pulling with your left hand.
Okay.
So if you flip that around, because this is where all your control is on the bottom axis. You got to think of it like literal physics, right? So if you're going like this, you're trying to turn the lever way up here, even though the bottom of your leverage is at the bottom of the bat, right? So when you swing, you turn and roll your hands for a perfect swing. You roll right at the point of contact,
yeah,
and then you follow through, like you said, with your left hanging over your shoulder. You're having issues, clearly, right? Because you're doing that, and then you said sometimes you even let go. Well, you're not getting a full swing by doing that. You're literally losing inertia by having to do that. If you could somehow switch hands and put that right hand, not only are you stronger on your right arm because you're right-handed, plus everything we just talked about, but physics-wise, you'd be more inclined to be able to get that roll and then let that inertia continue to go. The problem is are you going to be able to hit the ball at all? Hand-eye coordination issue. Once you get that solved, though, you'll have all the power you've never had.
Pull that bat through. Like, I mean, it's interesting. I've kind of thought about it.
Finish the swing. I learned this. I immediately got better at swinging a baseball bat when I started playing disc golf because I'm right-handed. So I throw the disc like that. Well, because my coaches always tried to get me to switch right-handed because they could see I wasn't generating power with my left, being a right-handed hitter. So they wanted me to, I think I've been saying this backwards. So they wanted me to switch to being a left-handed batter because they knew if I could figure this out, I'd generate more power, but I couldn't get my body and the mechanics right.
It's weird.
It was so awkward, dude.
Super awkward for me to try and swing
lefty. As soon as
I
started disc golfing, bro, like I naturally had to work out these mechanics, and I learned how to balance and turn my hips and use my momentum and use the bottom of my body to generate power in the upper part of my body so I could drive. And I can outdrive people stronger than me. Like I can easily throw a disc fucking easily between 300 and 400 feet, no problem.
Okay.
Sometimes I can get up to 5 if it's the right disc and the right conditions. Soon as I did that and I nailed down those mechanics, I went to the batting cage. No problems. It was
really?
Yep. And I'd never practiced swinging a bat right-handed as an adult. I completely developed these new mechanics through a different sport.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. I was like, oh, I know what I fucked up all those years as a kid trying to switch to being a left-handed batter. Went to the batting cages, sure as shit. Fucking bing, 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 bing. Oh, man. And I still, if I ever wanted to like join a baseball league like that, I would still need to put in some serious work because I'd probably strike out a lot. Because again, the hardest part is the hand-eye coordination. I'm used to doing everything on this side.
Yeah, so when you don't know where your bat is, right?
Exactly.
Because you're not used to it that way. I mean, I've thought about it. I never really moved. I might entertain that idea a little more.
It can't hurt you.
Yeah.
Right? Like it can't hurt.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna fuck your skills up because you still have all these mechanics built in. Those aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, right. So I mean So that's what I do with baseball. With drumming, it was a thing like, you know, I like this drumming thing. I'm going to do it, but I won't be able to do rolls or I won't be able to do this, I thought, you know, because I can't do it with that. Like, oh, I can't do multiple hits with my hand or whatever. But all of a sudden, like, you just start figuring it out, you know, when you do it enough and you just, so then It was a great thing for me. When I was in 7th grade, I wanted to be in school band, but you had to have piano experience, like piano lesson experience.
Gross.
and to be a percussionist, because you got to play like the xylophone and stuff. So my parents talked to him and say, hey, this would be really good for his cerebral palsy if he could still be in percussion and go from there. And so they let me in. Well, then I only joined 1 year, and then a couple of the other boys I was with, they quit out, so then I quit it anyway. And then it took me another year before I found Metallica and I got back into it. I eventually rejoined band in high school, but like,
oh, that's cool.
I think it was a huge thing, because when I joined in 7th grade, I learned how to read music. I understood it. I think that was a good basis for me. And I don't think it's essential for people to have to be able to read music, but I think it's really fucking helpful.
I'm sure it is, especially in your world where you're doing shit with people across platforms. So you're doing a lot of stuff via email from LA.
Yeah, they'll send me sheet music.
And that's the thing, is you're doing movie scores and shit like that. Like, you ain't getting tabs. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I knew how to read music when I was in orchestra as a kid, and that shit was literally useless once I got into the real music industry, because nobody knew how to read music. Everything was tabbed out, so I just lost that skill over time. But I agree.
I can see that.
Like, it definitely is helpful. Again, like the idea of switching stances, like, it can't hurt. Like, nothing negative can happen by you knowing how to read music. So
some people go and say, don't fix it if it ain't broken or something. And I don't know. I still lean toward, like, some of these guys that are like killer players that can't read music, or they got a technique that is really funky and it might hurt them later, but they're killing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still kind of lean, if you kind of switch it up a little bit, I still kind of think that it might be a good idea if you want longevity. If you might find yourself in a situation where you really need to read music sometime, and you're just gonna have to be like, sorry, can't do it.
Yep. And then you might not get that gig.
Yeah,
because they may need you to. I mean, like, I was talking to Jen Dean on the podcast. She does the Wolverine stuff. It's a big band jazz group. It's all sheet music. They don't even rehearse.
Big band charts.
So she shows up with big band charts and has them on a music stand, and then she's sitting there sight reading while she's playing.
Yeah,
the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good paying gig. Like, if you can't do that, then you ain't getting that gig.
Oh, yeah.
Which means you're not going to be in that band, which means you're not making that money. Which means you still got to have a fucking day job.
That was, then that's right. That's awesome. I didn't know that she was doing that. That stuff is great. I did a little bit of big band when I was in college. It's sick. Oh, she actually
brought me a Wolverine big band CD. I have actually listened to this since she's been gone too. I just pulled it out. Yeah, I literally just pulled it out yesterday because I needed to put something else in there. Somebody else's CD actually. But yeah, when people bring me these CDs and shit, like, I actually listen to this music. And then I gave her a copy of my buddy John's CD. He's got this band called Whoop Nash. I worked with him at Guitar Center. Fucking one of the best guitar players I've ever seen or heard in my entire fucking life.
You saw him live once too?
No, I worked with him. He was my friend.
Oh, okay.
Like, and he'd dick around on guitar at the store every once in a while. Just fucking, and he's one of those guys, like, and I'm sure I'll use a drumming analogy.
Because I don't understand.
We know all the blast beaters in the metal community, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ask those fucks to shuffle.
Right.
Half of them will go, what? They don't even know what a shuffle is.
They'll call it, what it's been called sometimes is the Tommy Lee shuffle.
Sure.
Right? They'll play the Smoking in the Boys Room rock version,
which is not
like a real shuffle.
Which is not a fucking shuffle. No. For anyone who's confused with a shuffle, it sounds like a, but it's all done with a 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and then there's an accent going over here, so it's and then you add in a kick and an open hi-hat in there, and you start getting into some really high-level drumming shit, right? Like, you'll immediately stumble on, if you want to get into shuffles and better yourself as a drummer, Robin will back me up on this. Learn John Bonham, Fool in the Rain by Led Zeppelin.
So, like, the halftime shuffle.
And then the Purdy shuffle.
Yeah.
And then
Rosanna.
I was just going to say Rosanna by it's Toto, right? Yeah. Those three are arguably the hardest things to play on drums, especially correctly, if you want to do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can learn how to blast beat and be a death metal drummer in 6 months. It's all muscle memory. Just dexterity and conditioning.
Fingers and
yeah. Easy. It's really not even a high level thing to do. It's more of a physical conditioning thing to do. It's
well,
like
sure.
your body is highly in tune, but your mind is not high evolutionary, to use a fucking comic book villain. You're not the high evolutionary of drumming because you can blast beat. You're fucking Iron Man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, cool, but it's not this big of a deal. Like, when you want to get to that next level, you got to learn how to shuffle.
And it's about, there's dynamics in it, right?
Yeah.
So in the groove, you know, like you're doing the
alt.
Those are ghost notes, and then you got to have a loud note for your back. Yeah, and it's all got to sort of flow too. You can't just do it
exactly.
Can't write it on a.
So you were talking about the mallet
machine
thing earlier, and they're not learning the bounce.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's beautiful about shuffling is every type of stroke and beat, everything is in all shuffles. Like, you're gonna have a hard hit, you're gonna have a ghost hit. Ghost hits is what he's talking about. Is like you're barely above the drum and you barely let your stick touch it, so you can barely even hear it.
That's why it's called a ghost note.
That's why we call it a ghost note. But the point is if you remove it, you notice that it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't. If you're not a super high level music fan, you have no idea what we're talking about. Anyways, if you are a music fan and you're still a little confused about what we're talking about, you don't notice when ghost notes are there, but you do notice them when they're missing. Yeah. And a beat won't sound full and it won't sound right. So learning how to not overplay a ghost note is what I'm getting at. The distinction between what you said, which is like you got to have your ghost notes, but then you got to have that back note where you actually hit the snare for real, so you have a real beat. Otherwise, it's just
it just kind of is
forever, and that's not cool. But when you go now, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that sounded kind of cool. And then you add in a drum or a kick drum and then an open hi-hat and you start getting all those other little things in there, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, that's a dope ass beat, bro. It's like, yeah, it only took me 3.5 years to write and perfect.
I still touch on it, and some days I'm like, man, this ain't happening today. Like,
for real. Can you even shuffle when you're cold? Or do you have to warm up first? Because I can't shuffle unless I'm like fully warmed up.
With cerebral palsy, it's your muscles can tense up like real tight. So some days I might feel loose, but some days it's tight and then it's not moving, right? So generally, yeah, like I need to warm up a little bit. I have a whole warm up routine. I actually put it on my my website too.
Really?
Like one of my articles, like, because I think it's a good warm up routine. But yeah, just like getting the blood flowing, right? Is because it is a demanding beat, right? It's the ghost notes. I always think of that the backbeat is loud, and some versions have right after it a quiet one.
Yep. That double stroke. And dude, that's huge, because a lot of drummers put in that double stroke because they think it's easier to end the bar on a double stroke to turn around and hit the one on time. Do you know that?
Right.
A lot. So because they don't have to worry about like bringing it back on time. That second stroke automatically puts this arm on the upbeat when they turn and come back to the one. And so it's automatically there.
Yeah, it's more of a fluidity of what you were already doing. It's still
so believe it or not, that double stroke at the end is actually a laziness, and it's a cheater shortcut, because those guys didn't have the discipline.
They didn't do it. They slapped that backbeat nice and hard. And let it sing a little bit before it went to the ending.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we could nerd out and go down this drum rabbit hole all fucking day. Hopefully people find it interesting, even if you don't play drums, if you're a musician or you're just a fan and you're into music shit. Because that's one of the biggest things I get as a musician is from non-musicians. They always ask me, like, where does it come from? You know, how do you get inspired? Like, all these crazy music questions. And I don't like sitting down and interviewing other musicians. So I figured it'll just come up over time, naturally, organically in these conversations. But, fuck, I totally lost my train of thought. What was I saying? People ask me where it comes from and all that kind of shit. But I brought that up to try to make a point on the drumming and on the playing side of things, specifically in reference to the shuffling. Oh yeah. Sometimes it just comes from, I want to write a song like this, because it's so cool to listen to.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just do this. I'm going to just basically try to steal and rewrite this song, but you don't go learn the song. You just listen to it and you try to do something like it. I literally got one song on my album that I'm working on right now that guitar riff, I literally wrote the verse guitar riff over and after the Burial song that was literally playing in the background. So I could still right now grab that guitar and play this After the Burial track and play my riff right over it. It does not sound like After the Burial. It doesn't sound like the After the Burial riff, but it's perfectly in key, and the timing and the swing and the groove are identical. So I can play my riff over that song and it sounds fine. Remove the After the Burial song, put in my backing track. It sounds like a completely different tune.
That's cool.
But it was still one of those things where it was like, this is playing on in the background. I'm dicking with these, like, this shape, we call them on guitar. I'm dicking with this shape, and it just wasn't sounding right. And then for some godforsaken reason, I moved it up like 2 whole steps and stumbled into the ATB key of this one song.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Let me just stay here in this pocket, because at least then I'm in tune with these guys in the background, because I liked the beat, the groove of the beat. So that's what I was trying to write to.
Yeah.
And once I ended up in key, the song got written like that. Like the riff got written, and then I turned the song off because the rest of the song isn't even remotely the same. But everything else just came to me. And I've been describing that to people too. Like, sometimes I don't even write these songs, Robin.
Well, no, right. I'm with you.
I follow the boat down the river.
You know, Gene Hoglan.
Yeah, from
amazing drummer.
Don't tell me. I know the name. Strapping Young Lad.
He's in Strapping. He did the Death Clock stuff.
Yep.
He was in Death.
Motherfucker wears ankle weights while he plays drums, dude.
Dude's a badass. Originally Dark Angel. I mean, he's like a drumming metal genius.
Yeah, he's a demigod.
Right. Everyone,
in the
you know,
metal
he's
world.
top 3. You know, Dave Lombardo, Igor Cavallero,
Travis
whatever
Barker,
you want to say.
Yep.
But so
I
Gene
would have put
Hoglan,
Lars in there back in the day.
so would I have. I used to go online to message boards before you had social media, really, and I would argue with people that Lars was the best drummer ever.
Definitely the best songwriting drummer in metal of all time.
Definitely he definitely made his mark. You do not see drummers writing with whatever main guitarist like he was, you know, and he was arranging and he was piecing.
There's 2 drum beats that I want you to tell me if these are good examples or not, that he plays that do not musically make sense. They sound great when you're listening to them, but if you're just trying to jam, like you're like, oh, I know that part, like you're gonna fuck it up really bad. The acoustic section of Master of Puppets, when he's doing the dun,
yep,
and it doom doom cat doom doom cat. It's like a 9/8 bar that he wrote in 4/4 time, if that makes any fucking sense. When you're listening to the record, it's one thing. It's like, oh, it sounds totally normal. But I was playing to that album the other day, and I was playing the guitar riff, and I was losing my spot in the drum beat. And I'm a tight fucking guitar player. I wasn't falling off beat. I was losing my spot because the snares are not where you expect them to be in traditional music. And then another great example would be One. That entire verse, the intro, all of that shit.
So it's in 3/4 in One. It's in 3/4, but he's not playing like a 1 2 3 1 2 3. He's playing 1 2 3 1 2, like an accent on the. And
exactly, because the riff's in 4/4, but he wrote it in 3/4. Without playing a 3/4 beat. This is what I mean when I say he's the best songwriting drummer in metal history.
You know, he definitely heard some things differently, or when you're outside of the box, when you go, I don't care if we're in 3, like maybe some drummers are like, oh, we're in 3, I'm going to play groupings of 3.
Right.
You know, whereas he took it and said, it sounds more like it's in 4. I just have to make it reset at the right time.
Yeah,
right?
like he'd play his hi-hat in a 3/4, so it's
yeah, maybe
but
a
then
little
he'd
bit
put
of
the snare on the 4, so it'd be. But then he'd throw in those kick drums is where he really fucked me up as a kid. Because when we were kids, man, even in metal music, it was either on the floor, right?
Yeah.
Or it was doom, top, doom, top, doom, top,
yeah.
doom, top. And all of a sudden Lars comes in with doom, doom, cats, doom, doom, doom. And it's like, what the fuck was that? You know, it's like, where's this dude coming from? Now, granted, as a 4-year-old, all music was impressive.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing this up is because he really was the most innovative songwriting drummer, I would say, until the Black Album. The Black Album, working with Bob Rock dumbed his drumming down.
Mm-hmm.
And then he never went back.
Well, he explained that a bit too.
Did he?
He said, I want it to be a little more simple, a little more accessible, and a little more just emotional rather than complex,
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
I saw
he
in an
didn't do
interview.
it out of laziness. Well, at least he says it's not laziness.
Well, I think every band evolves, and
So how do we rationalize how shitty of a drummer he's become, specifically live?
When you get huge paychecks every month and you don't have to practice.
So he's not practicing 8 hours a day.
I bet you he stopped practicing around the year 2000.
I bet you're right.
Because you could see a progression, and I'll be the first to admit, I love the albums Load and Reload.
Me too.
Love them.
Yep.
I think they're amazing albums.
I've always said if they didn't say Metallica on them, no one would say anything negative about them.
Yeah, right.
Your only gripe on those
agree.
albums is that it says Metallica on it. If they would have just changed band names for 2 albums, everyone would revere those 2 albums.
Yeah.
And it's only Metallica fans, dieharders, that don't like those 2 albums.
Yeah,
everyone else likes them.
They're amazing.
They're great albums.
So, and you saw a progression. His best thrash drumming was in And Justice for All. Then he did the rock thing, and it was much simpler on the Black Album.
So you're with me on that then. So, because I think that's Metallica's best album. I think that's Lars's best drumming. I think it's the most articulate. I think it's the most progressive. But a lot of people will still tell me, not only am I wrong on whether that's the best album, but Lars's drumming is superior on master. And I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think it's more intricate on And Justice for All. I think he tried to step it up. He went from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning, stepped it up a little, stepped it up again to Master, and I think he tried to step it up again. There's definitely some stuff.
Dude, Blackened?
Yeah.
Count that out.
Well, that
you know what I mean?
guitar riff fucks me up. That's the thing with that
the
one.
riff and
it's
the
in
drums.
6/4, but he's playing a double time, and to hear that come around, and then he's always got that upbeat thing where he crashes on really the and a 1.
Yep.
And I thought for sure on the song Fight Fire with Fire that he was dropping a beat, but I think it was I just read an interview with Fleming Rasmussen, the producer, and he said, how come everything starts on an upbeat? And Lars was like, what's an upbeat? Yeah, it's like back then, 84 or whatever.
Yeah.
But so he didn't know what he was doing, but it fit. And
it worked for him.
Well,
because he didn't know what an upbeat was, he didn't know not to do it. He didn't know that part wasn't supposed to be used like that. And so by him, because my singer, Montoya, is notorious for this. I sent him, I'm covering Chicago, 25 or 6/4.
Oh, yeah.
With the horn section.
Love it.
Got rid of all the horns. Everything's been transposed to guitars.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of heavy. I use some darker chords. So instead of the cheesy power chords they used, which basically sounds like a Green Day song, or Green Day sounds like them, the
it's that same progression.
It's the exact same chord progression.
Yeah.
Correct.
In 1,000 songs.
Exactly. So I switched like I said earlier, I switched the style of the chords. So I'm still using that same chord progression, but it no longer sounds like either of those 2 songs because I dissonant chorded them, however you want to refer to that. Did some other weird shit in there, transposed the guitars. I send it over to Jeremy, and he's like, this is really cool, man. I'm excited to lay down vocals on this, but it doesn't sound like any of your other stuff. And I was like, it's because it's a cover. And he's like, oh, cool, who is it? And I go, Chicago. And he's like, oh, I've never listened to Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Other people look at that as a flaw. And they go, Jeremy doesn't have any respect for other brands of music and shit. And I go, no, stop. That prevents him from conforming to something he's already heard.
Yeah,
he's using that as a tool, not as an anchor. It's not holding him down or holding him in one place. It gives him creative freedom because he's not influenced by any of this other shit. So you genuinely know what's coming out of Jeremy is original. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think Lars had the drumming version of that because he didn't know any better.
He didn't come from this trained background.
Right.
I always read that he was only 3 years into seriously practicing when he recorded Kill 'Em All, which I couldn't imagine doing.
I kind of believe that though because I did that with the Tyrants.
Well,
I played drums for a year and then recorded that album.
Oh,
I did all of that work from not playing drums.
You did some music though, right? You still did music.
Well, I was in bands before that. Yeah.
I assume that was his beginning of music too, which I think would be for me. After 3 years of playing, we were able to fake our way through For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Right.
That was the first song I learned on drums, and it's like that is, to me, is pretty impressive. But at the same time, it's like, that's why he was where he was at, because he didn't have this.
His drumming was flat out sloppy on Kill 'Em All.
Yeah, and it's boring, and it's the same. It's a lot of the same thing, which he never did in another album again, because after that he said that was cheesy. Now that we have money behind us, I need to do
plus he
something.
probably got bored on stage. I mean, how many of us do that?
Right.
You write these songs and you tour for a year. It's like by the end of that year, you're fucking bored.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Switch 'em up.
either I got to switch them up or I got to start writing different stuff. And that's the thing, is you notice Lars's style change with each album, just like James' guitar playing.
Yeah.
Like that's what made that band so special, is it's those two together. Like I'm curious, does Lars even become Lars without James? I don't think he does.
Yeah, I don't think. What blows me away though too is the funky way that Lars plays with that upbeat accent, especially on the double time beats.
Yep.
When he's going fast and he crashes on not the downbeat but right after it.
Yep.
Because he's playing this, and I don't know how James and the rest of the band doesn't get flipped upside down. Because like I've been listening to those for years, and I'm like tweaks my head. I'm like, no, that's not one. One's over here. Like it messes me up. Or more importantly, after Cliff was gone, Jason Newsted comes in, has to play with this dude that has these weird changes. Or later on, Robert Trujillo trying to play with these guys, like in Sad But True. They used to play it as a triplet. It's sad but true. Like now they play it like eighth notes, and it's like a weird odd meter that it's sad but true.
Oh,
like
I know what you're talking about.
Slowed it way down.
They put
live.
a bunch of swing on it, so instead of it being it's sad but it's it's sad but true.
Over the years they kept slowing it down, so it's like
they're putting so much swing in that one part. They do that at the endings of their songs too. It's like if you count it, it's like down. So, and it's like normally that'd be fine, but they don't do the offbeats. They just go down, and it's like the pauses get long, and it's like those are supposed to all be 4 counts. Yeah. But he's slow. That's what blows my mind about that band is there's no click. They're not playing live. Yeah, they are click
to each other, like inside each other,
and they're not looking at each other when they do that. Yeah. Like somehow they know that Lars is going to slow his tempo coming out of this. It's going to be at 180 when he hits that first cymbal crash. There's no hi-hats in between the next one, and by the time he hits that next one, he's at 160. And by the time he hits the third one with no hi-hats in between, he's at 140.
Yeah,
and they all hit each stroke perfectly.
Yeah,
that's something
I bet you Robert had to look for the first few years at Lars and see him, because some of the wackiest hits. I think of even For Whom the Bell Tolls live, when they play it, there's that one spot where they all stop and the lights go off.
Yeah.
You can't look at them for that downbeat.
It's the last time you will.
Yep. Boom. And they all hit it.
We just did it now. We both came in perfectly on time.
we did 4. Lars does like 4 1/3 of the
right.
beat.
The other one, you know what really fucks me up still on record is all have said their prayers, invade their night.
Comes on beat too. It's weird.
Yeah, dude. So like they hit that pause and then it's just the vocals. All have said them, and it's like that still to this day fucks me up. I've been listening to that record for over 20 fucking years, 30 years now that I think about it. Yeah, 88, 98.
Did you get it right when it came out?
Well, I mean, I was 4 when it came out, so it's like literally been ingrained in me. And my dad got it the day it came out, so I heard. Same thing with the Black Album. Like I remember being 7 years old and hearing the Black Album, Enter Sandman, and going, "Dad, what is that?" Or Scott, I didn't call him Dad. I'm like, "Scott, what is that?" And he's like, "It's the new Metallica." And I was like, "Really? I love Metallica." And he's like,
"That's funny."
He's like, "No, you don't." And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "You've never heard Metallica before?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have." And I swear to God, at 7 years old, I ran into his bedroom, opened up his cassette collection, and filtered through and went, "This one," and showed it to him. And he goes, "Holy fuck!" It was And Justice for All. And he goes, "Holy fuck. You really do know who these guys are?" And I go, "Yeah, play this song." And I pointed and it was One. And he goes, "You even have good taste."
That's funny.
That they knew at 7 years old I was a metalhead, whether I wanted to be or not. I was super into it.
I didn't start listening to any. This was late 90s when I got into them. It was right when it was after Load came out.
That's
it was
when
right
everyone
before
got
Reload came out. But I got into the Black Album at that time, and I remember. Do you remember the band Crash Test Dummies?
Yeah.
Dude had like that really deep voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, exactly that song was on Dumb and Dumber. Oh, you're gonna get caught on YouTube there. You sang it so damn well. But that song, I was like, okay, it's Crash Test Dummies. Dude's got
probably will get flagged for that, dude.
But Hero of the Day,
YouTube.
before I was a fan of Metallica, Hero of the Day came on the radio, and I told my buddy, he's like, oh, what is this? I said, what is this, Crash Test Dummies? He looked at me like, he's like, dude, this is Metallica. I'm like, okay, Metallica, okay. Like, I heard the name, and it's a cool sounding name, right? I didn't know what it was. I thought Hero of the Day was Crash Test Dummies. That so shows me what I knew. But then my buddy was like playing me Black Album, and then he's playing. Then we got Load, and then we we didn't look at the older stuff until a little bit later. I mean, the last album I got of theirs in the late '90s was Kill 'Em All.
Really?
And I was like, oh, this is weird. Because it's like a punk.
It's a totally different band.
Way different. Yeah,
totally different band. 100% different band. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's another thing is if you listen to that progression, and I've tried to tell this to some of the younger guys I've been mentoring too, is like, you guys have to develop your sound, and then you have to evolve that sound. I only know of one band that I'm actually a fan of that didn't really change their sound at all. They just got better at doing it, and that's Coheed and Cambria. So you listen to their original record versus the one that just came out. They experimented and did some different shit in between, but they never changed their sound or their style. They just got better at doing it every album. They're the only band. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Metallica, The Beatles, Michael Jackson, Prince. Name a band, and you can show how they evolved their sound.
Yeah, and I like that,
I do too.
I mean, I like when they change. The one that I lost interest
I'm not saying
of
that as a negative.
because they didn't evolve.
I'm looking at the time.
I thought it was a spider.
No, I'm looking at the time. I keep an eye up here. I look for the frames just to make sure we're running good, which we're fine today.
That's good.
And then we're running at close to 2 hours, so we can keep going, but we should start wrapping this up.
Sure.
Otherwise, we'll be here for 6 hours.
Yeah, you can just keep talking. Well, so the band I'm thinking of is Slayer. They did the whole thing into the 90s. Then they changed at the end of the 90s, which is actually, I love that shit. And I just read an article, Diablos in Musica, Undisputed Attitude. I love those albums. Mm-hmm. But then they went back to the thrash thing, and I got bored. I said, I wanted you to evolve.
Right.
And you didn't. And maybe they didn't do it better than they were doing before. They did the same. Right. I don't know. It got boring to me. God Hates Us All is a pretty damn good album, though. Mm-hmm. But after that, I have a Christ Illusion album. I don't know when that came out, but it was like, I don't know, one song.
Pantera did a pretty decent job of sticking with their style and their sound, but also just getting better at it, like a Coheed.
Well,
like you look at towards the end, like Reinventing the Steel and shit like that.
I love that. That's all from but
they flat out
Vulgar
changed
Display, because they started from like kind
they
of
were a glam band,
and they had
flat
a
out
singer too, right?
No, that was still Phil. Believe it or not, that was fucking Phil. Yes, that was Phil.
I don't even know that stuff, but I think the oldest album I know of is Vulgar Display the oldest one.
No, they had two before that, bro. They had
not saying that that's their first album, but I might not know any of their 80s stuff because Vulgar Display was 90 or is it 91?
Vulgar Display was like definitely somewhere between 91 and 93.
Yeah, right in there.
Because it was basically like in somewhere between 91 and 93, you had four prolific metal albums come out.
Far Beyond Driven.
You had Vulgar Display of Power.
You're talking about any band?
Yeah, you had Vulgar Display of Power from Pantera, No More Tears by Ozzy Osbourne, the Black Album by Metallica, and Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth. Like four pinnacle level albums from those four groups, which were metal. Like you had glam rock in the 80s, so you had your Crew and you had your Def Leppard and those type of bands, right? But then you had the metal bands, specifically the big four: Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth. Well, Anthrax did not drop, neither did Slayer, a prolific
after 90. Yeah.
Well, when I'm saying, I'm specifically talking one that was like a legit number one, number two, number three album on the Billboard charts.
Sure.
So this was like
Anthrax never did, but
the most successful bands released their most successful albums in that 91 to 93 era.
Good point. Okay. Because I was going to say, you could say GNR with User Illusion, but really their pinnacle album was Appetites.
Correct. And that was
pre-88.
Here's a fun fact about that one. No one knows this one, but it's true. Appetite for Destruction was originally released in 1983 and bombed.
Really?
Bombed. So they stuck around the LA scene for 4 fucking years, playing and touring that album in LA and around the California area, and then they relaunched that album in 87 and it blew up.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And most of that album was written in the late 70s, early 80s for a band called LA Guns.
Well, so I knew
that LA Guns broke up, and then Axl Rose joined the band.
You said Guns N' Roses, right?
Yep, they named it Guns N' Roses, and then the music still wasn't what it was yet. Slash goes to audition for Poison, and Poison was a makeup band, right? And Slash was like, yeah, I'm into this band. I want to join this band, but I'm not wearing the makeup. And they were like, you have to wear the makeup. And he's like, no, I don't. And they were like, yeah, you do. And he's like, no, I don't. I don't even have to be in this band. And they're like, sorry, dude, you got to wear the makeup or you can't be in the band. So they found immediately the next guy, I believe, came to the audition with CC DeVille.
Yeah.
Slash left that rehearsal, and the next audition he went to was Guns N' Roses. And he was like, yeah, I'm into the band. I'll be in the band, but I'm not wearing the makeup. And they were like, okay.
Yeah, right? Like, wear that goofy ass hat.
I mean, I guess CC DeVille was pretty good, but I got to imagine Poison regretted that decision years later, because Slash is still known to this day. If
his
I went,
sound, right?
Well, not only his sound, but his name. Like, I could go across the street to the 15-year-old black kid and be like, hey, have you ever heard of Slash? And they'll be like, yeah, isn't he some like old rock guy? If I go, have you ever heard of CC DeVille? And they'll be like, is that the guy that owned the club down in Uptown? Like the CC? You know, they don't fucking know who CC fucking DeVille is.
Well, you know, but if Slash would have joined Poison and he wore the makeup, would Slash have been Slash?
He wouldn't have worn the makeup.
He wouldn't have. Okay, so what if they let him in the band without wearing the makeup and he wears his hat? You know,
then I think
at least you got a shtick. I think
he still becomes Slash, but Poison isn't Poison. They don't sound like that. Because if you think about Slash's style over that GNR shit, which is all blues music, if you really break down first album,
it's very different than Poison's music. It's not glam rock. That was the step. It's funny because if you would have told me in 1989 that what's the next wave of music, I'd say it's the Guns N' Roses bluesy thing, because it happened 10 years ago with Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
You know, it's coming back, but then all of a sudden the grunge, and then you went, oh, okay, it's totally wrong. But
yeah, that's an impossible one. What's going to be the next style of music? It's like, you don't know. You never know. Man. No one would have predicted grunge. Go before that. No one would have predicted glam metal. You know what I mean?
No.
And that was a wild one too, because if you study the history of music, like, we came out of the 70s with guys like Hendrix and fucking that whole movement, right? And then all of a sudden Van Halen showed up on the stage, and because Van Halen, people don't know, they were performing out as a band in like 1977, 1978, and 1979. When they recorded that first album, Van Halen 1, I think they recorded that album in 1979. They blew up in like 80 or 81.
I thought it came out like 78.
You might be right. I might be a year off on all this shit. But they didn't blow up until like 1980, 1981. They were still gaining a lot of steam up till that point. But they basically are responsible for glam metal, because people saw the extravagance that was Van Halen, and they all wanted to start their version of Van Halen. Yep. And they couldn't, so they ended up creating glam metal. Like, it was just like, well, we can't
play like Eddie.
Exactly. We can't seem to figure out how to be Van Halen. So this is as close as we can come. That ended up being also super successful, and 100,000 bands decided to join that group, and boom, now you got glam metal. And then same thing. No one would have ever seen fucking grunge coming. And then predicting new metal, or even before that, we had ska. You remember the alternative rock and ska movement?
Mighty Boss Tones.
Yeah, and fucking
mid-90s.
Real Big Fish, and No Doubt. That shit came out of grunge combined with punk rock combined with ska music.
Alternative rock, or, you know, everything that was happening.
Or reggae, I mean. They called it ska.
Yeah.
And then out of that came nu metal, which nu metal was a variation of punk rock and hardcore music, right? Like the hardcore music, the simple chords, you know, and then they dropped the tuning, and then they got a 7-string guitar, and they were the first band to blow up with 7 strings.
Yeah.
And they created a whole new genre. Then you had Seven Dust and Slipknot and all these other bands follow that. And then coming out of that, we went full 180 and went right back to metalcore. Like metal guitars, hardcore beats and grooves and breakdowns and shit, you know?
Breakdown.
And now that is still technically the closest thing to metal that's popular right now, but they're not the biggest bands. The biggest band right now in rock, the biggest band around right now went back to rock. It's fucking Greta Van Fleet, who went back to what you just said, the blues 70s fucking bullshit that was already popular. It's like some of it's cyclical and some of it comes out of nowhere.
I think they have some good tunes, Greta Van Fleet, but I think that people hate them because they sound too much like Led Zeppelin.
True.
You know, but like you bring that bluesy sound, you know, and I think people are looking for something with a little more rawness like they were in the early 90s.
Yeah.
You had glam metal that everything had this sheen to it. You know, you're partying, but you're pretty and you've got fucking makeup and you're doing this whole thing. And all of a sudden somebody said, that's not real. That's bullshit. I want something real. And this dude comes along in a flannel and, you know, greasy hair. And he says, I'm just playing this. And all of a sudden everybody goes, that's what I want. Something real.
Yep.
We have so much fixed pretty bullshit right now that something real's got to come out.
Yep.
Something real raw, you know, and that's what I think somebody's going to like. I don't know what direction that's going to be because electronic stuff is so much ingrained into our music now that I don't think that can be taken away from the music, but somehow it needs to have a real raw feeling to it. And, you know, that's just not out there. I love Shinedown, but gosh, it's immaculately perfect.
Yeah, and that whole thing, the Shinedowns, the Breaking Benjamins, like that is what we in this town we call that 93X rock.
Yeah.
No one likes that music except for fans, right? Which is cool because we need fans. We want to sell records. But Dalton and I, my guitar player, we've been joking about this algorithm we made up, where in order to be truly successful or define talent or any of these obscure terms, right?
Yeah.
You take like, and I'm gonna fuck this equation up, but it was something like you take instrument proficiency times mutual respect from fellow musicians divided by album sales equals your actual greatness as a band or a musician, right?
Yeah.
Because in order to do that, we kind of joked about this earlier. Tepetracy, you said, was like a musician's band, right?
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning, it definitely was, which is why you guys weren't drawing anybody.
Yeah.
But eventually, your singer learned how to write catchy music and catchy vocal parts over that musician's music. And then all of a sudden, girls and fans started singing along to your songs.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, you had regular fans dig your shit. Plus, you had all the respect from the musicians who also dug your shit. And then all of a sudden, you guys were drawing 500 to 800 people yourselves as a headliner.
We simplified a little bit, too. And, you know, big part of it, Aaron, my super good friend, he actually wrote out drum parts a lot of times, which I didn't really contest too much because usually they challenged me. He wrote vocal lines even a lot of times. He even wrote some lyrics in the beginning, but not really. But I mean, like, he was such a big part of that sound. Now, okay, so if everything started with him and you've got almost this finished product, but then, you know, you would put it in a room and then you would kind of make it yours, and I would have little nuances and changes and everybody would do their thing. But I mean, a big piece of it was Aaron, and I thought it was really cool. And, you know, I have my album, right? But I never really exercised any songwriting in that band, just my drum parts and kind of maybe saying, you know, structural things a little bit here and there. But I never started writing music until I started doing this. And that's why that came about. It's like, well, I never exercised that. So then I say, I want to write my own thing. And I think people need their own solo album to get that out.
Yeah, I think it helps. How much? Let me ask you this. I don't want to graze over that because I definitely think you're right. I think it helps when you're responsible for everything. It makes you understand what's going on those other instruments more. So next time you're in a group and somebody's not playing what you think they should be playing, you're more receptive to it because you've done that job now. Like that's what I think people do appreciate being in a band with me now that I'm on guitar and they know I played drums and they know I've been a singer, where when I was a singer nobody knew I could write music, let alone play the instruments, right? So
Sure.
it was when I was like, no, that drum beat ain't good, they were like, fuck you, man, you're not a drummer. And it's like, I secretly am, and I'm actually better than you at that instrument, and that drum beat fucking sucks. I didn't say this, but that's what I'm thinking in my head, right? And same thing, like now I'm a drummer and I'm telling my guitar player, I'm like, dude, that riff's whack. And he's like, well, dude, fucking, it's not like you could do it. And I literally, this time I did, I'm like, give me your fucking guitar. And I played his riff better than what he was playing it. And he's like, that's fucked up. And I was like, no, it's not. You're fucking lazy, dude. Like, I'm telling you, your shit's sloppy. It's not on time. Tighten it up because I can do your job. He didn't appreciate that. It was more the way I handled it than the point I was making, right? Well, now that I'm on guitar and the members I'm jamming with, they all understand that. So when I'm like, that beat ain't working, they're like, okay, let me try something else then. They like, there's equity there. They understand that.
Yeah,
and I also don't jump
comes with age too, I think, right?
Yeah, and I also don't jump on their ass when they're not doing anything.
You're not a dick anymore.
Well, yeah, definitely. I'm not as big of a dick, but I'll also go, well, I'm not feeling that part, but I don't necessarily want you to change it either, because I also understand, since I've played drums for so long now, that might actually be the right drum part, and it's just not what I heard in my head. So keep playing it.
Live with it.
Give me a week or two.
Yeah.
Let's see if it grows on me.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody can get that understanding if you're doing a solo album. It can really help a lot.
I like what we're doing. This group, I'm in Catacosm. We get together and we literally jam out stuff like.
That's cool.
Like real, like
it's
sax
sad that
player
that's
is
a special thing now.
Well, right. Well, and I listened to you and Wally talked about it a lot on your podcast, and I was like, yeah. So we get in a room and the bass player puts a bass line out there, and we start like our sax player. He's a really great soloist, I think, and he can sit there and he solo, and he'll grab pieces of what he's soloing. You're just jamming, right? You know. And then I start putting a drum beat. And yeah, we have suggestions for each other, and there's like a mutual respect because we're at the age now where like we can handle a little bit of constructive criticism and go, okay, let's build
and the
it
respect
this way.
thing is the big thing, I think, because like, yes, it's a little bit maturity and age and experience, but I think really it comes down to respect, because you're gonna listen to me criticize this part you're writing on drums because you respect me. That's why I'm in that room with you.
Yeah.
However, now, if you're putting your foot down and you're like, no, motherfucker, I'm in love with this drum beat, I have enough respect for you to go, okay, it's your call. It's your fucking instrument, dude.
No, it's live with
that
it
is based off of respect.
Yeah.
Because we understand, like, each one of these dudes in this room is doing his job to the best of his ability or her ability. And I can't necessarily do that job better than he can. And he has to have some sort of autonomy over his parts so he can be vested, so he doesn't feel like he's in a cover band. And most of the time, if you're with really good musicians, they end up being right, not you, right? So it's like, if you're in love with this drum part and I'm fighting you on it, now I have the respect and the maturity to back down and go, all right, fine, keep your fucking part. 6 months later, I regularly come back and I'm like, I'm really glad you decided to die on that hill, because that's my favorite part of that song now. And that wouldn't have happened if you would have just given in.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And those things don't happen unless you're in a room with each other.
It's true.
It's
an interesting thought. And we sit and labor over tunes. Sometimes labor over it more. Sometimes I'm like, well, this can just go here, and this is how this song can go. Like, I like to slap it together. Whereas these guys, they want to labor over it more, and I think that's good for me, because I'm not. It just bring me out of my comfort zone.
Right.
It's good, because then you're going to pull something different out of me too, and I'll surprise myself, and that's and it all comes from respect too.
Yeah, unless you're a Billie Eilish, where you're writing it all with her brother on a computer in a basement, you're not going to write the best songs you can. If you're in a band and you're doing it that way, you have to get into a room with each other in order for your band to be the best it can, because that'll go back to something else I've said on the podcast a million times. If you're in a room, you can fight with each other over what's best for the song. When you fight, you create friction within the band.
Yeah.
When you create friction, you can create fire. You can't create fire without a little friction. So if you're never in the same room and you never argue, people are constantly giving in, and that song or that art isn't getting its best foot forward from all the members of it.
I like that.
It's obscure, but it's
making a little bit of fire.
Yeah, because you can't have fire without friction. Name me one band that makes prolific music that didn't fight like cats and dogs, and I will eat my own ass. It's not going to happen.
No, it's not true.
The greatest bands of all times fight like insane people.
No, I mean it's true.
Well, it's 100% true.
Yeah, and it's
because you care. That's why it matters. And that's why it's a factor, I should say, is because it matters to those members. They fight for something because they care about it. And a lot of people, they're just like, I'm just sick of arguing with the singer. And it's like, dude, the singer's fucking important. Like, you should be fighting with the singer because that means you both care. If you're giving in and never fighting, it means you don't give a fuck. There's nothing worth you speaking up about.
There's something my teacher always told me. Awesome teacher. He used to work at McNally Smith, but now he's doing his own thing. But Dave Schmallenberger is his name. Awesome drummer. But he would say, I would talk about, I get so nervous before a show. And he's like, it's all right to get nervous as long as you can keep a handle on it and you're not puking all over yourself. But it's okay that you're nervous because it means you care.
Exactly.
You know? And you care.
Yep.
So, and then that gave me a little bit of calming.
It's comforting to know that.
Yeah, right?
Because he's one of the few people probably in your life at that time that showed you these aren't flaws and they're not signs of weakness. This just means you're like real. You're human and you give a fuck about what you're doing. Because if you weren't nervous, which is kind of funny because I don't get nervous on stage anymore. And I haven't since my first show. Is what I get is anxious. Like, because I'm such a prepared person. Yeah. Like, I know I'm going to go up there and perform my parts. I'm not going to fucking sit here and get nervous. Am I going to be able to hit that note tonight? That doesn't do me any good. Right? So pre-show, worrying about things, which is what normally would make you nervous, right? So you're a first-time drummer on stage. You practiced for 3 years with these guys since you've been 15. You finally get your shit together. You're 18 years old. You're playing your first show. You're justifiably nervous that you're going to remember all the parts. You're not going to drop a stick. You don't know how to prepare for those things because you've never been on stage.
Yeah.
Once I did that the very first time, I was like, never going to work. Even I forgot 2 verses. Not in the same song. 2 different songs, I forgot the verse. I just made shit up because I remembered the melody. I just couldn't remember the lyrics. And I'm like, while I'm on stage at 16 years old, however old I was at my first show, I literally, as I'm like about to hit this verse and I'm like, fuck, I don't remember the lyrics. Yeah. Something hit me and I go, neither do they. You know the melody, just make up new words.
Right.
And so I did that. And as soon as I did that, I went, everything can be improv'd and fixed on stage. There's no reason for me to be nervous. Now is what I suffer from is anxiety. Like, I hate the hurry up and wait shit. Gotta load in by 6. Because you fucking better be there by 6. If you're late, that is not fucking cool. You better be there at 6 on time. Yeah. But then your band doesn't go on till 11. What am I fucking doing for 5 hours? Waiting. I fucking hate waiting. All I want to do is rock. That's all I want to do.
It's like, okay, I'll just have 1 drink because I'm chilling, but then it tastes good. And then, you're 3-4 drinks in. You didn't want to be 3-4 drinks in before your set.
Right.
Have the drinks after. That was my thing. It's like, I don't want to have a bunch of drinks before I get on stage. I want to do
It's harder to do as a drummer or a guitar player because it's really easy for us to have a beer or 2 and keep rocking. As a vocalist, it was really easy because 1 drop of alcohol could fuck my voice for the entire night. Like, literally 1 sip of beer can fuck my voice for the entire night. So as a vocalist, it was really easy to not fall into that. I'm legitimately actually worried about that as a guitar player because I've never played guitar on stage. Never once have I played guitar on stage. I wrote most of the music in a lot of the bands I've been in. Not all the bands. 3 of the bands were completely collabs. So we wrote our parts. We were a band. But there's other bands I've been in where I wrote all the music, including the guitar parts. Never did it on stage, though. So now that's exactly what I'm wondering. I load in at 6. I'm fucking bored. I know I can have a beer or 2 and play fine.
But
can I only have 1 or 2 beers over a 5-hour period? No, I can't. I know that. I can have 1 beer or 2 beers like at dinner and stop and drive home and not drink for the rest of the night. I'm fine because I had a meal with it, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not even buzzed. Sure. I'm not drunk. It was a taste combined with the food. But at a show, when I'm sitting there for 5 fucking hours, it's like, nope, I already know this isn't going to go well. So I'm already mentally like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to have to fucking go hang out in the parking lot and chill in the car. Like, do I buy a little gaming system where I can just relax for 4 hours? Because I don't want to disrespect the other bands and not hang out for their set. But at the same time, it's like, dude, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen all the local bands. Like, no offense, I don't want to see your opening act. Like, I need to be focused and make sure that my show is legit. And if you really are that good as an opening band, I'll hear you. I'll hear you behind the venue, and I'll stop what I'm doing and fucking be like, these guys sound really good. I got to check this out.
Check it out.
Yeah. Listen, I got to take a huge leak. We've been doing 2 hours, over 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Let's start wrapping it up. Yeah, we'll probably end up getting out of here about 2.5 hours. That's a pretty solid podcast.
Yeah.
Where can people find your shit again? RobinRapsys.com.
That'll link you to everything.
Spell it for them.
ROBINRAPSYS.
SYS. Rapsys.com.
Yeah.
There you
Lithuanian.
go. And yeah, people can check out your drumming, your videos, your blog. They can find your socials. They can find all that shit and follow you.
All old bands, new bands. It's all like what is it? I don't remember the section, but it's like projects.
Sure.
So it's my old. It's to Petruzzi's on there.
Everything's on there.
Old things, new things.
And check this shit out, you guys. Fucking Robin's beast. He's one of the most well-respected drummers on the scene.
Thanks, man.
The bands you've been in have always been well-respected. So. Thank you for coming, dude. This was a lot of fun.
Dude.
Let's do this again.
Thanks, man.
I want to go longer, but I got shit I got to do today. And you're local, so it's not like I flew you out from Texas and I'm not going to get you again for another year.
No,
yeah, we'll do it again in a couple months. Same thing for me, guys. I do have a website coming. Eventually, I'll just be plugging that flat out. But for now, like, subscribe, hit the bell on the YouTube page. And then if you do want to follow me on social media, it's all Jared Singer Live. So whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's Jared Singer Live. That wraps her up, bud.
Cool, man.
All right, man. Let's do this again. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy.